Chapter 148. It's a pity. The effect of the embryonic origin pill is the greatest when taken for the first time. Su Qin sat cross-legged, slowly converging his aura as he thought silently. The embryonic origin pill can strengthen the foundation, but it's not an endless strengthening. According to the system's information, the efficacy of the embryonic origin pill will be greatly reduced when taken for the second time, and it may even be completely ineffective if taken a few more times. Although Su Qin was a little disappointed, he could accept it. The embryonic origin pill has already brought Su Qin enough surprises, so what's there to be dissatisfied with? In the next period of time, I'll go to the crop altar to sign in a few more times to see if I can get a few more embryonic origin pills. Su Qin touched his chin and made a decision in his heart. In any case, I'll take the embryonic origin pill until it has no effect before thinking about other things. At the same time, inside the Long Life Temple, the Emperor of Tang looked dignified as he looked at a piece of information in his hand and looked up at a figure standing below. This figure has ordinary facial features and would hardly attract anyone's attention if he mixed into a crowd, but at this moment, he appeared in the Long Life Temple. Obviously, he was valued by the Emperor of Tang. One must know that the Long Life Temple is the palace of the Emperor of Tang for generations. It is located in a relatively private place, and under normal circumstances, the Emperor of Tang will not call any of his subjects here. Is what you said true? The Emperor of Tang put down the information in his hand and solemnly said, "Reporting to your Majesty. This is what I learned from a concubine of the Jiannan King. After repeated confirmation, it should be true. This figure is called Jiangying, who is now in charge of the intelligence agency of the Empire of Tang. He is someone that the Emperor of Tang can absolutely trust. A few years ago, when the 10 vassals rebelled against nearly half of the subjects in the imperial court, the Emperor of Tang realized that there was a problem with the intelligence agency of the Empire of Tang. After that, the Emperor of Tang personally re-established the intelligence agency of the Empire of Tang and appointed Jiangying as the head of the intelligence agency. Over the years, Jiangying did not disappoint the Emperor of Tang. Not only did she remove all the spies and chess pieces that the 10 vassals had planted in the Empire of Tang, but she also monitored the entire imperial court, and even began to spread her intelligence network to all the countries in the world. Your Majesty, the reason why the 10 vassals dared to rebel was because they had the support of the Blood-Kill Gate. Jiangying cupped his fists and said, "Ever since the vassal king's million-strong army was defeated and retreated back to their respective territories, the Emperor of Tang ordered the army to raise the 10 feudal territories one by one. Now, the effect was obvious. The fiefs of 5 vassal kings had already fallen into the hands of the Emperor of Tang. The Jiannan King was one of the 5 vassal kings. This information that Jiangying obtained precisely came from a certain concubine of the Jiannan King. According to this concubine, the Jiannan King had accidentally blurted it out one day when he was drunk, and she had kept it in mind. Blood-Kill Gate. The Emperor of Tang's face was a bit ugly. The Blood-Kill Gate was not a martial arts sect. It was more like an organization that lurked in the dark. Although it was not limited to the world, it had an extremely terrifying influence on all the countries in the world. It was said that when the Imperial Secret Service of Nanming was established, it was to resist the infiltration of the Blood-Kill Gate. Of course, the most important reason why the Blood-Kill Gate was free and unfettered until now and feared by all the countries was that more than 200 years ago, the Blood-Kill Gate had a martial arts legend. Although this martial arts legend had crossed the sea and disappeared 200 years ago, all the countries in the world still did not dare to act rashly. The Blood-Kill Gate dares to instigate the internal affairs of the Empire of Tang. How dare they? The Emperor of Tang suddenly stood up, his face full of anger. Although it seemed that the 10 vassals had been defeated and were about to be raised by the army of the Empire of Tang, the situation was very good. But all of this was based on the divine light that rushed out from the depths of the imperial palace. It was this divine light that directly turned the 10 vassals into nothingness, causing the morale of the million-strong army to drop to the bottom and not dare to fight again. On the surface, it seemed that the Empire of Tang had taken a big advantage. But what if there was no divine light? I'm afraid that the result would be different. Your Majesty, this matter needs to be cautious. Jiang saw the look on the Emperor of Tang's face and immediately advised. The blood-kill gate secretly instigated the 10 vassals and schemed against the Emperor of Tang's family. It seemed that they had completely stood on the opposite side of the Empire of Tang. But in fact, the Empire of Tang could not touch the blood-kill gate at present. Although the martial arts legend of the blood-kill gate had crossed the sea and disappeared 200 years ago, the disappearance of the sea did not mean that he had fallen. The martial arts legend had Shoyuan for 500 years. In other words, the martial arts legend of the blood-kill gate was very likely still alive. If at this time, the Empire of Tang made a move against the blood-kill gate, what if the martial arts legend came back? I know what to do. The Emperor of Tang gradually calmed down and sat back on the dragon throne. Everyone in the world believed that there was a martial arts legend in the palace of the Emperor of Tang, but the Emperor of Tang knew his own affairs. Although he also guessed that there was a martial arts legend hidden in the palace, he did not know who it was. Not only did he not know who it was, but the Emperor of Tang did not even know any information about the other party. Was it a man or a woman? How old was it? What was its relationship with the Empire of Tang? He did not know any of these. Therefore, the Emperor of Tang could occasionally pull a tiger's skin, but he did not dare to do too much because the Emperor of Tang was not sure if the existence hidden in the depths of the palace would make a move the next time the Empire of Tang faced a life-and-death crisis. What should we do now? The Emperor of Tang thought for a while and asked. Your Majesty, since the blood-kill gate dares to secretly provoke the 10 kings, they must have another plan. The most important thing now is to stabilize the situation in the Empire of Tang and completely digest the fiefdoms of the 10 kings. Jiang saw that the Emperor of Tang had calmed down, and he was slightly relieved and immediately said. He was really worried that the Emperor of Tang would completely fall out with the blood-kill gate in a rage. I know. The Emperor of Tang thought for a while and nodded. No matter how the blood-kill gate instigated, as long as the Empire of Tang was impregnable, the blood-kill gate could not do anything. At the same time, the fiefdom of the palace of Gojoseon. In a very hidden manner, the eldest sons of the remaining 5 kings gathered here. Now, as the army of the Empire of Tang continued to advance, 5 of the 10 kings were gone, and the remaining 5 were in danger and could fall at any time. At this moment, the eldest sons of the last 5 kings appeared here to discuss how to deal with the army of the Empire of Tang. Damn it, why does my father want to rebel? Can't he just enjoy power and beauties in his fiefdom? The eldest son of the Fanon king could not help but whisper. If the 10 vassal kings had not rebelled, they would still be the eldest son of the first wife, living a life of drunken stupor. It's useless to talk about this now. Let's talk about what to do next. The eldest son of the Hedong king shook his head and said, The Empire of Tang has been established. If we don't make a decision, I'm afraid it will be too late. As soon as these words came out, the remaining 4 eldest sons of the kings were shocked. The eldest son of the Hedong king was right. Now their 5 fiefdoms could not hold for long. After a long time, the eldest son of the Pingla king cautiously said, How about we surrender to the Empire of Tang? Chapter 149. Surrender to the Empire of Tang? The expressions of the other sons of the vassal kings changed. At this point, the army of the Empire of Tang had already defeated the 10 princes. Instead of waiting for their fiefdoms to be broken, it was better to surrender. Maybe they could get half a life of wealth and wealth? Just when the prince's disciples were tempted, a cold voice suddenly sounded. Surrender? Others may live if they surrender. But as princes you must die. A white-clothed man with a faint blood-red mark on his forehead walked out silently. You are? The faces of all the sons of the vassals changed greatly. Are you from the blood-kill gate? Only the princes of the Shuafang of Gojoseon solemnly said. Blood-kill gate? The princes looked at each other with ugly faces. If it weren't for the blood-kill gate, the 10 princes wouldn't have the courage to rebel. If they didn't rebel, today's situation wouldn't have happened. To some extent, most of the credit for their current situation was due to the blood-kill gate. Yes. Under the gaze of the princes, the man with the bloody mark frankly admitted. What do you mean by what you just said? The princes of the Shuafeng of Gojoseon frowned and looked at the man with the bloody mark. What do I mean? The man with the bloody mark sneered. Haven't you already guessed it in your heart? The rebellion will implicate the whole family. Maybe the Emperor of Tang will not kill everyone in order to smoothly take over the 10 fiefdoms, but as princes, do you think you can survive? The man with the bloody mark said with a trace of disdain on his face. Even an outsider like him could see it clearly. He knew that everyone had a way out, but the son of the first wife of the king absolutely did not. At most, they would die with dignity and be given a cup of poison wine. The words of the man with the bloody mark made the prince's disciples' hearts thump and their hands and feet turn cold. We can't beat them, and surrendering means death. Then what should we do now? The son of the first wife of the Fan young prince spoke with deep despair. They did think of escaping, but the world was so big, where could they escape to? Perhaps as soon as he left his fief, his head would be chopped off by his subordinates and offered to the Emperor of Tang. Since you've come to us, you must have a plan. The son of the Shuafeng of Gojoseon stared at the man with the blood-colored mark and said in a deep voice. He. Hearing this, the man nodded slightly and said, In this rebellion, not only did the 10 kings suffer heavy losses, but my blood-kill gate also suffered heavy losses. In order to support the rebellion of the 10 kings, the blood-kill gate sent out 3 peak grade 1 experts, but in the end, they were buried under the heavenly divine light together with the 10 kings. This kind of loss, even for a huge organization like the blood-kill gate that had produced a martial arts legend, was still very painful. Most importantly, the Empire of Tang would find out sooner or later that all of this was done by the blood-kill gate. At that time, the Empire of Tang would definitely retaliate. If it were other countries, they might be afraid of the martial arts legend of the blood-kill gate from 200 years ago, and would not dare to make a move. But the Emperor of Tang now had a martial arts legend in his palace, so there was no need to worry about it. Therefore, the man with the blood-colored mark simply decided to go all out and make a last stand. The way is very simple. You can surrender. The man with the blood-colored mark glanced at the princes and said lightly, Surrender. The princes looked at each other with a puzzled face. Just now, the man with the blood-colored mark said that they would definitely die if they surrendered, but now he was asking them to surrender. I'm asking you to surrender, of course, it's a fake surrender. I will replace one of you and go to see the Emperor of Tang. When that time comes, I will personally kill the Emperor of Tang. The Emperor of Tang's death will inevitably plunge the Emperor of Tang into chaos, and naturally has no time to care about the kings. The man with the blood-colored mark slowly said, Assassinate the Emperor of Tang. The Shufang king's son's expression changed. There is a martial arts legend in the imperial palace of the Tang Empire. How did you assassinate under the nose of a martial arts legend? The other princes also looked at the man with the blood-colored mark. The plan of the man with the blood-colored mark seemed to be fine, but in fact, it was impossible to achieve. A martial arts legend? It's not like the blood-kill gate has never had a martial arts legend. The man with the blood-colored mark shook his head and said, Don't worry, the means of the blood-kill gate are not something you can imagine. Okay. Then let's do it. Seeing this, the Shufang king's son gritted his teeth and agreed. As the man with the blood-colored mark said, as princes, there was no way out. The Emperor of Tang's palace. Su Qin was strolling leisurely. Nowadays, in addition to signing in and cultivating, he occasionally gives pointers to Li Wan. This little girl's aptitude is good. Even if she is not as talented as Xian Ku of the Shaolin Temple, her future achievements will not be low. At least, under the guidance of Su Qin, it will not be difficult for her to reach grade 1 Great Grandmaster. As for whether she can go further, it depends on her own fortune. Recently, I have been signing in at the crop altar, but there has been no sign of an origin pill. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he silently thought in his heart. However, although there was no sign of a second origin pill, Su Qin is not in a hurry. Anyway, he has a lot of time. If he can't sign in 1 year, then he will sign in 10 years. If he can't sign in 10 years, then he will sign in 100 years. At that time, even if Su Qin has not stepped into the realm of Great Arhat, he is not far away. Shouyuan has been extended again, so he is not in a hurry. At the same time, in the Taiji Palace. Your Majesty, there is news from the fiefdoms. The remaining 5 fiefdoms are willing to surrender, and their first sons are already on the way back to Chang'an. That's good. The Emperor of Tang, Li Xing's face was filled with joy. Time passed. Half a month later, the 5 first sons were successfully escorted to Chang'an. Your Majesty, several first sons of the kings want to see Your Majesty, saying that they have something important to say. The eunuch approached the Emperor of Tang and whispered, "See me?" The Emperor of Tang thought for a while and said, "Bring him up." Soon, the 5 first sons of the kings slowly entered the imperial palace under the guidance of the eunuch and finally stopped outside the Long Life Temple. After the eunuch entered and asked, the 5 first sons of the kings were allowed to enter. The Emperor of Tang sat on the dragon throne and looked at the 5 first sons of the kings in prison clothes. "What do you want to say to me?" "Your Majesty, this sinner has something important to report about the Blood-Kill Gate." The first son of the king of Fanyang opened his mouth and took a step forward, wanting to speak more clearly. "Blood-Kill Gate?" The Emperor of Tang was shocked and was about to listen carefully. Suddenly, at this moment, the first son of the king of Fanyang suddenly turned into a blood-colored shadow and rushed towards the Emperor of Tang. "Sure enough, you want to assassinate me." Seeing this, the Emperor of Tang did not panic at all, as if he had already expected it. Just that. The next moment. Whoosh! More than a dozen eunuchs in red appeared in front of the Emperor of Tang like lightning. Bang! A muffled sound of collision rang out. The figure that turned into a blood-colored shadow suddenly flew out. Failed? The blood-colored shadow turned back into the man with the blood-colored mark, and his expression was extremely ugly. He did not expect that the Emperor of Tang would be protected by more than a dozen Grade 1 Great Grandmasters at any time, and that they would react so quickly. Almost at the moment he attacked, they appeared. Dong dong dong! Outside the Long Life Temple. Suddenly, there was a lot of light footsteps. More than a dozen deputy commanders of the Forbidden Army who were also Grade 1 Great Grandmasters surrounded the Long Life Temple, cutting off any possibility of the man with the blood-colored mark escaping. This is troublesome. The man with the blood-colored mark fell into an abyss. Chapter 150. Inside the Long Life Temple. The blood-colored man stared at the Emperor of Tang hiding behind more than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs and shuddered. He thought that the biggest risk of sneaking into the imperial palace was that he might be discovered by the legend. For this reason, the blood-colored man deliberately put on the Blood-Kill Gate headquarters treasure, the breath-concealing jade robe, to prevent being discovered by the legend. The breath-concealing jade robe was left by the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate 200 years ago. Wearing this jade robe can completely avoid the detection of other legends. And this is the blood-colored man's biggest reliance. In his view, as long as the legend in the imperial palace does not take action, the assassination of the Emperor of Tang should be a done deal. "You already knew that I was going to assassinate you?" The blood-colored man suddenly realized something and looked at the Emperor of Tang. This was the only possibility he could think of. Only in this way would the Emperor of Tang be vigilant in his heart, and let the experts in the imperial palace hide in the dark. Once there is any situation, they will take action, resulting in the current situation. Yes. The Emperor of Tang heard the blood-colored man's words and nodded slightly. In fact, since the assassination attempt when the Emperor of Tang was still the crown prince, he has been very vigilant against assassination. Coupled with the fact that the Blood-Kill Gate added fuel to the fire of the rebellion of the 10 kings, this was even more so. One must know that the Blood-Kill Gate's favorite thing to do is assassination. Therefore, before the first son of the king entered the imperial palace, all the red-clothed eunuchs with grade 1 strength were ordered to protect him in the dark, and more than a dozen Forbidden Army deputy commanders were stationed outside. Once there is any abnormality, they will lead the army to surround the Long Life Temple. The Emperor of Tang's arrangement can be said to be flawless. Even if the assassin is a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, with the protection of more than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs, they can delay for a while, enough for the Emperor of Tang to retreat. Then, with the army outside the temple encircling and suppressing, the peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster can be slowly killed. We originally thought that a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would come to assassinate us, but you are not. The Emperor of Tang shook his head as if it was a pity. The difficulty of killing a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and killing a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is completely different. Peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. The face of the man with the blood-colored mark stiffened. Even the Blood Kill Gate only had 4 peak Grade 1 experts. 3 of them had died under the heavenly divine light, and the remaining one had to guard the Blood Kill Gate's headquarters. It can be said that at present, the Blood Kill Gate does not have any peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. Do you want to surrender yourself, or do you want my people to do it? The Emperor of Tang looked at the man with the blood-colored mark who had an uncertain expression and asked. Surrender? The man with the blood-red mark stared straight at the Emperor of Tang and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. For hundreds of years, the disciples of my Blood Kill Gate have never surrendered. As soon as he finished speaking, the man with the blood-colored mark disappeared from where he stood. Not good! More than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs saw this scene, and their expressions changed. They protected the Emperor of Tang behind them while constantly scanning the surroundings. At this moment, suddenly, a dull sound of fighting came from outside the Long Life Temple. He escaped? The red-clothed eunuchs looked at each other and did not go out to support. Their task was to protect the safety of Emperor Li Xing. If they ran out rashly and jumped into the other party's plan of luring the tiger away from the mountain, and let Emperor Li Xing fall into a trap, then they would really die. Besides, there are more than a dozen Forbidden Army deputy commanders outside the Long Life Temple. Coupled with the army, even if the assassin escapes, he will not last long. They only need to ensure the safety of the Emperor of Tang. At this time, outside the Long Life Temple, the man with the blood-colored mark looked at the more than a dozen Forbidden Army deputy commanders who faintly surrounded him. Damn it! The man with the blood-colored mark took a deep breath and felt that this time he might really die here. Die for me! One of the Forbidden Army deputy commanders took a step forward and slapped him with a palm. Rumble. This palm had the faint sound of wind and thunder. It was obviously very powerful. For a moment, the man with the blood-colored mark's expression changed. Crack! The man with the blood-colored mark once again turned into a shadow and barely dodged this palm. Suddenly, different Forbidden Army commanders who had been standing not far away suddenly attacked. Army Shattering Fist. This Forbidden Army commander had the strength of peak Grade 1. Under this punch, the air faintly trembled. Ah! You forced me to do this! Seeing this scene, the man with the blood-colored mark knew that he could not escape. The next moment, the blood-colored mark on the man's forehead suddenly exploded and turned into wisps of blood mist. Suddenly, the man with the blood-colored mark's strength soared and suddenly reached peak Grade 1. Bang! The Forbidden Army commander flew backward. After the man with the blood-colored mark repelled the Forbidden Army commander, he did not take the opportunity to kill him. Instead, he coldly glanced at the other dozen or so Forbidden Army deputy commanders and turned into a shadow again and disappeared. He used a forbidden technique. He can't run far. Pass down the order. Search the palace. Don't miss a single corner. The Forbidden Army commander quickly recovered and looked at the other dozen or so deputy commanders and said in a deep voice. At the same time, not far from the Palace of Immortals, in an extremely inconspicuous shadow, the man with the blood-colored mark stood there with a gloomy expression. I have to leave the palace as soon as possible. The man with the blood-colored mark suddenly felt a sense of urgency. Now the palace was like a tiger's den to him. He could be exposed at any time, and then be surrounded again. There are a large number of forbidden army guarding the 4 imperial gates. In my current state, I will be discovered if I even get a little closer, let alone leave. The man with the blood-colored mark thought quickly as he tried to think of a way to survive. Is there anyone else who is a martial arts legend in the palace? The man with the blood-colored mark panicked. Logically speaking, with such a big commotion, even if he had the breath-holding jade robe, he should not be able to hide from the martial arts legend. However, since the martial arts legend had not made a move yet, the man with the blood-colored mark guessed that the other party might have left the palace. Thinking of this, the man with the blood-colored mark heaved a sigh of relief. Now I need to find a place where I won't be easily discovered and then recover. When the palace is less guarded, I will have a better chance of escaping. Although the man with the blood-colored mark wanted to leave the palace, he knew that he would not be able to do so in a short time. Where should I recover? The man with the blood-colored mark looked around and finally stopped in the direction of the East Palace. The Empire of Tang has not appointed a crown prince, so the East Palace is the most deserted. If I choose to recover there, it will work. Thinking of this, the man with the blood-colored mark once again turned into a shadow and quickly sneaked in the direction of the East Palace. As long as I get to the East Palace, I have a good chance of surviving. The man with the blood-colored mark had a strong desire in his heart, and for a time, he even sped up a lot. According to the intelligence of the Blood-Kill Gate, although the East Palace is deserted, the third brother of the current Empress, Su Qin, lives there. If I can control this Su Qin, maybe I can sneak into the Emperor of Tang again and assassinate him. The more the man with the blood-colored mark thought, the brighter his eyes became. He suddenly realized that the East Palace was a treasure for him. It was not that the man with the blood-colored mark had never thought of controlling the Empress or the Prince, but with the character of the Emperor of Tang, these people would have been tightly protected. However, this Su Qin was not the closest to the Emperor of Tang, but they were not estranged either. This would give him a chance to make a move. Soon, the man with the blood-colored mark came to the right side of the East Palace. This is where Su Qin lives. The man with the blood-colored mark glanced around and stepped in without hesitation. However, the moment the man with the blood-colored mark entered the right side of the East Palace, he felt that the world had changed, as if he had come to a vast void. This is? The man with the blood-colored mark was dumbfounded. Then, before the man with the blood-colored mark could react, the world changed again. The man with the blood-colored mark came to a room. Was that an illusion? The man with the blood-colored mark blinked and was just about to breathe a sigh of relief, but then he saw a man sitting cross-legged not far away, slowly looking at him with deep eyes. Chapter 151. Inside the right spring square. The man with the blood-colored mark calmed himself down and quickly looked around. After making sure that there was no ambush, he set his eyes on the man sitting cross-legged not far away. He's Su Qin? The man with the blood-colored mark did not immediately make a move because he did not feel a trace of inner strength from Su Qin. The other party was an ordinary person who did not know martial arts. Facing an ordinary person, even if the man with the blood-colored mark had just used a forbidden technique and lost a lot of his strength, he did not think that there would be any threat. Just as the man with the blood-colored mark was finally able to put down his worries. However, he was suddenly startled. No! Something is very wrong! The man with the blood-colored mark's pupils shrank fiercely. He finally noticed the abnormality in this place. Silence. It was too quiet here. The man with the blood-colored mark had just tried to assassinate the Emperor of Tang and failed. Logically speaking, the palace should be full of forbidden army patrolling and searching. But now, the man with the blood-colored mark did not hear any sound. It was as if this place was completely isolated from the outside world. At this thought, the man with the blood-colored mark's face turned slightly pale. He vaguely felt that he should not have come to the Eastern Palace. Did you just assassinate the Emperor of Tang? At this time, Su Qin glanced at the man with the blood-colored mark and said casually. When the man with the blood-colored mark broke into the right spring square and fell into the heaven and earth array, Su Qin was alerted. Then Su Qin probed with his divine sense and enveloped the palace for a while. He roughly knew what had happened. No wonder you dared to come to the palace. So you're relying on the aura concealing treasure on you? Su Qin only glanced at the man with the blood-colored mark and noticed that the man was wearing an invisible, transparent, and faintly blood-colored cloth. To be honest, with the protection of this cloth, the man with the blood-colored mark's aura was almost invisible. If he encountered some martial artists who had just entered the martial arts legend level, he might be able to escape. Of course, it was limited to martial arts legends of the first heaven. Once faced against a martial arts legend of the second heaven, the effect of this piece of clothing would be greatly reduced. If faced against a martial arts legend of the second heaven, this piece of clothing could almost be ignored. As for Su Qin, Venerable Arhat, who was close to the fifth firmament perfected stage, the cloth on the man with the blood-colored mark had long lost its aura-concealing effect. Aura-concealing treasure? How did you know? The man's heart turned cold. One had to know that the breath-concealing jade robe he was wearing could fool a true martial arts legend, but in the end, it was seen through by Su Qin at a glance. How could this be possible? The more the man thought about it, the more his scalp tingled. In the blink of an eye, an incredible thought flashed through the man's mind. Could this man named Su Qin be the martial arts legend who was in charge of the Imperial Palace? Thinking of this, the man with the blood-colored mark began to tremble all over, and an unprecedented regret suddenly emerged in his heart. Even if he stayed in the Long Life Temple and fought with more than a dozen Grade 1 great grandmasters, it was far better than running in front of a martial arts legend. The man with the blood-colored mark suddenly had the illusion that he had just escaped from a wolf's den and entered a tiger's den. No. This was no longer a tiger's den. It was a dragon's den and a phoenix's den. Who are you? Su Qin glanced at the man with the blood-colored mark and asked. I am. The man with the blood-colored mark opened his mouth, and his expression immediately became respectful. If his guess was true, and Su Qin was really the martial arts legend who oversaw the palace, then he had no choice but to be respectful at this moment. Blood Kill Gate's current generation Blood Killer greets Senior. The man with the blood-colored mark bowed his head and said, not daring to look directly at Su Qin. Although in the eyes of the man with the blood-colored mark, Su Qin was very young and did not look as old as him. But if Su Qin was really a martial arts legend, then what was the point of his young appearance? For any martial arts legend, regaining one's youth and eternal youth was as simple as eating and drinking. Su Qin looks very young on the surface, but maybe he is an old monster who has lived for hundreds of years? Blood Kill Gate? Blood Killer? Su Qin had a thoughtful look on his face. He had stayed in the palace for more than 10 years and had read all the ancient books collected in the palace. Naturally, he knew about the Blood Kill Gate. In today's world, the last martial arts legend came from the Blood Kill Gate. Since 200 years ago, when the martial arts legend of the Blood Kill Gate crossed the sea and disappeared, no martial arts legend was born in the world. Of course, Su Qin was an exception. As for the Blood Killer, he was the core disciple of the Blood Kill Gate and the future sect master of the Blood Kill Gate. The blood kill art cultivated by each generation of the Blood Kill Gate was passed down from the martial arts legend of the Blood Kill Gate 200 years ago. This time, my Blood Kill Gate has disturbed Senior and deserves to die. When I go back, I will definitely come to apologize. The man with the blood-colored mark bowed and said. He deliberately repeated the words Blood Kill Gate twice in order to make Su Qin a little afraid. After all, although the martial arts legend of the Blood Kill Gate crossed the sea and disappeared, he did not completely fall. If Su Qin had a little fear in his heart, then this would be his only chance of survival. I see. Su Qin nodded slightly. You can die now. Su Qin raised his hand slightly and casually grabbed toward the void. In an instant, an invisible wave enveloped the entire right spring square. The air, the world chi, everything was frozen under this wave. The man with the blood-colored mark only felt that he was like a bug trapped in a deep lake. It was extremely difficult for him to move, let alone escape. Ah! A strong panic appeared on the man's face, but under the suppression of absolute strength, the man with the blood-colored mark could only watch himself die. Suddenly, just as the man with the blood-colored mark was about to be crushed, buzz! A blood-colored token on the man with the blood-colored mark suddenly emitted a bloody light. Then, a stalwart figure in a blood-colored robe with scarlet eyes emerged from the token. "It's the ancestor!" When the man with the blood-colored mark saw this scene, joy appeared on his face. The blood-colored token on his body was the identity certificate of each generation of the Blood-Kill Gate. It was said that it was left by the martial arts legend of the Blood-Kill Gate 200 years ago. The man with the blood-colored mark originally thought that this token was just a token, but now it seemed that there was a backup left by the martial arts legend of the Blood-Kill Gate. "You killed my disciple." As soon as the illusory figure in the blood-colored robe appeared, he looked at Su Qin, who was sitting cross-legged not far away. Then, the illusory figure in the blood-colored robe saw Su Qin's right hand gently grasping the void. The next moment, the illusory figure in the blood-colored robe showed a look of disbelief. His entire body began to shatter and finally turned into nothingness. When the man with the blood-colored mark saw this scene, he suddenly froze in place and couldn't believe it. Chapter 152. Ancestral Master. The blood-colored man's heart was in turmoil. Originally, when the blood-colored token shone and drew out the phantom of the Blood-Kill Gate's mythical ancestral master, he still had hope in his heart. After all, although Su Qin was a martial arts legend, the ancestral master of the Blood-Kill Gate was also a martial arts legend. Although the mythical ancestral master that emerged from the token was not his real body, a mythical was still a mythical. Even if he could not match Su Qin, he could at least delay him for a while. With this moment, at least the blood-robed man had hope of escaping. However, the blood-colored man never dreamed that the mythical ancestral master of the Blood-Kill Gate could not even hold on for a moment in front of Su Qin. He turned into nothingness and disappeared. What kind of terrifying thing was this? Could it be that the martial arts legend of the Emperor of Tang's palace is not a beginner, but has already reached the depths of the martial arts legend realm? The blood-colored man only felt shocked and trembled, and despair appeared on his face. Although he was not a martial arts legend, the Blood-Kill Gate had records about martial arts legends. The martial arts legend realm was not comparable to the martial arts 9th grade. When one was at the martial arts 9th grade, one might advance by leaps and bounds because of a great opportunity. But for a martial arts legend, there was almost no shortcut. This was also the reason why all the martial arts legends of the past generations crossed the sea and disappeared. One was to pursue the aura of immortality that flashed and disappeared 800 years ago, and the other was to break through to a higher realm. In the eyes of all martial arts legends, the resources of the continent under their feet were barren, and there was no point in staying. Su Qin glanced at the blood-colored token, then waved his hand again, and the blood-colored man suddenly turned into nothingness and disappeared. This should be the means left by the martial arts legend of the Blood-Kill Gate. Su Qin's mind moved, and the blood-colored token suddenly floated up and fell into his hand. At this moment, dense cracks had already appeared on the blood-colored token, as if it would be completely shattered in the next moment. Divine sense still exists. It seems that the martial arts legend is still alive. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Su Qin had already used this method of placing divine sense countless times. It was precisely because of this that he was clear that all the divine sense he had split off came from himself. Once he died, these external divine wills would naturally dissipate like rootless duckweed. Since there was a manifestation of divine sense in the blood-colored token, it meant that the martial arts legend of the Blood-Kill Gate had not fallen. However, although Su Qin was sure of this, he wasn't worried at all. He had set up layers of heaven and earth great array in the right spring square, which could completely isolate one's aura. It was likely that the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate had not sensed the disappearance of his divine sense until now. Besides, Su Qin had roughly glanced at the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate's divine sense, and had roughly guessed his strength. It was probably between the first heaven and the second heaven. Even if such a martial arts legend really came back for revenge, Su Qin would not care at all. This piece of clothing is magical. Su Qin waved his right hand and saw an invisible, transparent piece of clothing that faintly revealed the color of blood appear in front of him. It was the treasure of the Blood-Kill Gate, the breath-holding jade garment. Although this breath-holding jade garment had no effect on Su Qin and could at most deceive martial artists who had just entered the legend realm, it was already incredible. It seems to be made of special material? Su Qin carefully looked at the breath-holding jade garment with a thoughtful expression. Keep it, I can give it away in the future. Su Qin's mind moved, and this invisible and transparent piece of clothing quickly folded and fell into Su Qin's hand. Blood-Kill Gate? Su Qin's eyes narrowed slightly. The Blood-Kill Gate dared to sneak into the palace to assassinate the Emperor of Tang, which was already considered a provocation. Ever since Su Qin made a move and shot 10 kings from thousands of miles away with the 9 Yao Bao, who in the world didn't know that the Emperor of Tang's palace was under his protection? It seems that after a while, I will have to go to the Blood-Kill Gate headquarters. Su Qin slowly got up and thought silently in his heart. The next day, Su Qin slowly walked out of the right spring square and strolled around the palace unhurriedly. Unknowingly, Su Qin came to the white jade square. Let's sign in here today. Su Qin stopped and made a decision in his heart. During this period of time, he has been signing in at the crop altar, wanting to continue to sign in and get an embryonic origin pill, but unfortunately, he hasn't been able to do so. So Su Qin decided to change places to adjust his mood. System sign in. Su Qin looked up at the white jade square and said silently in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Received Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique. Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique? Su Qin's heart skipped a beat. The Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique is a divine technique for the physical body, but its effect is not to strengthen the physical body, but to increase strength. The Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique is divided into 13 layers. Each layer has the power of 1 dragon and 1 elephant. When cultivated to the highest 13th layer, one has the power of 13 dragons and 13 elephants. With a raise of the hand, one can destroy cities and lakes. From a certain point of view, the Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique is not like other divine techniques that are good at all aspects. The Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique is just a divine technique of pure strength. Of course, the Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique is not without flaws. It is extremely difficult to cultivate, and many people even spend their entire lives at the first or second layer, rarely making progress. Of course, for Su Qin, this flaw was no different than nothing. Under the infusion of the system, Su Qin's comprehension of the Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique has probably reached the level of the founder. Coupled with various cultivation resources, such as blood bodhi, vermilion fruit, etc., Su Qin is confident that he can cultivate the Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique to the highest 13th layer in a short time. Not bad. Su Qin's face lit up with joy. There are not many divine techniques that can have an effect on him now, and the Dragon Elephant Prajna Technique happens to be one of them. I'll prepare to cultivate tonight and strive to cultivate to the 13th layer in 2 days. Inside the Longevity Hall, the commander of the Forbidden Army kneeled on one knee and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, this general has searched the palace several times, but did not find any traces of the assassin. Did not find anything? The Emperor of Tang frowned slightly. He did not doubt the words of the Forbidden Army commander. If the commander of the Forbidden Army had joined forces with the assassin, he would have died long ago. Are there any clues at the 4 city gates? The Emperor of Tang immediately asked. In the Emperor of Tang's view, if the assassin from the Blood-Kill Gate wants to leave, he can only do so through the 4 city gates. Your Majesty, the city gates have always been guarded by a large army, and several deputy commanders have been patrolling 24 hours a day. They did not find the assassin. The commander of the Forbidden Army lowered his head and said. When the Emperor of Tang heard this, a puzzled look appeared on his face. The assassin is not in the palace, nor did he leave through the 4 city gates. Could it be that he has completely disappeared? Chapter 153. Inside the Long Life Temple. The Emperor of Tang was puzzled. In his view, the Blood Kill Gate assassin used a forbidden technique in order to get rid of the siege of more than a dozen Forbidden Army deputy commanders. At this time, the other party only has 2 choices. One is to desperately escape from the Imperial Palace. The other is to temporarily hide somewhere in the Imperial Palace to recuperate, and wait for an opportunity to escape. But no matter what choice he makes, the other party must be in the Imperial Palace, and can't just disappear into thin air. The Emperor of Tang is very confident in the Forbidden Army in the Imperial Palace. These Forbidden Army were left behind during the reign of the Emperor of Tang. Later, they were reformed by Li Xing and can be said to be absolutely loyal. A Grade 1 Great Grand Master falling into the Imperial Palace is like a fish in a net. It is absolutely impossible for him to leave quietly. Continue the search. If he is alive, I want to see him. If he is dead, I want to see his corpse. The Emperor of Tang pondered for a moment, and suddenly said, "Regarding the defense of the 4 sides gates, you can relax a little." Relax? The Forbidden Army commander heard this and did not understand for a long time. At this moment, the Blood Kill Gate assassin is still in the Imperial Palace. They should be strictly patrolling. How can they relax? Humph! He is trapped in the Imperial Palace and must be thinking about leaving at all times. In that case, I will give him a chance. The Emperor of Tang, Li Xing, sneered and said slowly. So that's how it is. Your Majesty is wise. The Forbidden Army commander suddenly understood. The Emperor of Tang told him to relax, but he did not really relax. He deliberately exposed a flaw and led the other party to take the bait. Right. Send more people to patrol the East Palace. No matter where the Blood Kill Gate assassin is, Third Brother must not have any problems. The Emperor of Tang seemed to have thought of something and solemnly said, "As your Majesty commands." The Forbidden Army commander bowed and then slowly retreated. At the same time, Blood Kill Gate headquarters. A gloomy man exuding killing intent sat on the throne. He was the current sect master of the Blood Kill Gate, and the last great Grand Master of the Blood Kill Gate. Under the premise that the other 3 great Grand Masters had fallen, he had to stay at the Blood Kill Gate headquarters at all times to ensure that no accidents happened here. After all, for the past 200 years, the Blood Kill Gate had relied on their own martial arts legend to almost reach out to the various countries. Although the various countries did not dare to retaliate because of fear, now that the Blood Kill Gate had suffered heavy losses, there was no guarantee that the various countries would not have other thoughts. It's been such a long time, but there's still no news from Blood's Little. Looks like she's failed. After a long time, the leader of the Blood Kill Gate sighed and said slowly. He knew that the man with the blood-colored mark had gone to the Imperial Palace to assassinate the Emperor of Tang. He had even given the aura-restraining jade robe to the man with the blood-colored mark. As the most precious treasure of the Blood Kill Gate, it was a relic left behind by the myth ancestor. Other than the Gate Master, no one could arbitrarily use it. Originally, the leader of the Blood Kill Gate thought that by relying on the aura-restraining jade robe, the man with the blood-colored mark should be able to avoid the detection of the legend in the Imperial Palace and successfully assassinate the Emperor of Tang. As long as the Emperor of Tang dies, the Empire of Tang will be in chaos, and everything the Blood Kill Gate has paid will be worth it. As for the legend in the Imperial Palace of the Emperor of Tang, in any case, the Blood Kill Gate secretly instigated the kings, causing the legend to personally take action. Sending the kings and 3 Grade 1 Great Grand Masters of the Blood Kill Gate thousands of miles away was tantamount to completely offending the legend. In this case, even if the Blood Kill Gate did not assassinate the Emperor of Tang, the legend will not be able to reconcile with the Blood Kill Gate. Sooner or later, he will take action. Sect Master, what should we do now? The 2 Blood Kill Gate protectors next to him asked in a low voice. As protectors of the Blood Kill Gate, although they are not peak grade 1, they are still peak grade 1. But at this time, the 2 protectors' voices became cautious. The two protectors were very clear that the Blood Kill Gate Master is now extremely angry. If they say something wrong and annoy the sect master again, it will not be a good thing. What should we do? The Blood Kill Gate Master bowed his head and thought for a while, then said in a hoarse voice, "Disperse the disciples and scatter them all over the world." This was also the last retreat for the Blood Kill Gate Master daring to assassinate the Emperor of Tang. He knew that this move may completely anger the legend, but he still did it. Because as long as the disciples of the Blood Kill Gate are scattered all over the world, the legend in the Imperial Palace can't do anything to the Blood Kill Gate. Although the legend is invincible in the world, it is almost impossible to accurately target the disciples of the Blood Kill Gate from the countless people in the world. Generally speaking, a martial artist who has just entered the legend realm can only cover a dozen miles at most. A dozen miles is big, but compared to the whole world, it is not worth mentioning. Unless the legend is willing to spend hundreds of years to travel to every corner of the world, and use his divine sense to find the disciples of the Blood Kill Gate. But this is the most impossible thing. The legend himself is just a 500-year-old Shouyuan. How can he pay such a high price to find trouble with the Blood Kill Gate? Yes. The two Blood Kill Gate protectors next to him revealed a worried look. The Blood Kill Gate was forced to disperse the disciples. It was definitely the last moment. Sect Master, when can we gather the disciples again? One of the protectors couldn't help but ask. Soon. The Blood Kill Gate Master shook his head and whispered. The legends of the past almost never stay on this continent for a long time. At most, 10 or 20 years later, they will cross the sea and go on the road to immortality. And the Blood Kill Gate can afford to wait for 10 or 20 years. The Emperor of Tang's palace. Right Spring Square. Su Qin naturally didn't know that the Blood Kill Gate, which was feared by all countries, had taken the initiative to disperse the disciples before he even made a move. Perhaps even if Su Qin knew, he would laugh it off. The Blood Kill Gate Master's retreat may be useful to other legends, helping the Blood Kill Gate block the revenge of a legend. But in Su Qin's eyes, it was not worth mentioning. Other martial artists who have just entered the legend realm can only cover a dozen miles at most, but Su Qin is not new. He is the venerable Arhat who is close to the peak of the fifth heavenly layer. In addition, Su Qin has the Eye of Truth and the Celestial Divination technique. With these two secret techniques, Su Qin can completely see half of the Empire of Tang in an instant. In short, if Su Qin is really prepared to lock on every disciple of the Blood Kill Gate scattered in the world, it will only take a few days at most, not hundreds of years. Dragon Elephant Prajna Art. The power of 13 dragons and 13 elephants. Su Qin sat cross-legged, and the faint roar of an elephant and a dragon could be heard. If one looked carefully, they would find that the aura was flowing, sometimes condensing into a giant elephant that stepped on heaven and earth, and sometimes condensing into a golden dragon that roared to the sky. In the end, all the aura quickly converged and merged into Su Qin's body. The Dragon Elephant Prajna art is finally completed. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and his face was full of joy. Chapter 154. The Dragon Elephant Prajna art was a divine art that Su Qin obtained from signing in front of the White Jade Square in the palace 2 days ago. After cultivating to the 13th level, one would have the power of 13 dragons and 13 elephants. Generally speaking, even if an ordinary martial artist obtained this divine art, they would spend their entire life wandering around the 1st or 2nd level at most. If their talent and opportunities were enough, they might be able to touch the 3rd or 4th level. But Su Qin only used 2 days to complete the journey that ordinary martial artists could not complete in their lifetime. The power of 13 dragons and 13 elephants, plus the strength of my original physical body, even if I don't use any divine sense or true essence, my physical body alone is enough to suppress an ordinary 4th heavenly layer legend. Su Qin felt the surging power in his body, and a smile appeared on his face. One should know that whether it was a martial arts legend or venerable Arhat, the most powerful and most commonly used method was always the power of heaven and earth. Su Qin could suppress an ordinary 4th heavenly layer legend with his physical strength, so one could imagine how powerful his physical body was. In addition, my physical body also has the true dragon aura that is constantly being nurtured. The more time passes, the stronger my physical body will become. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and his face showed a look of anticipation. In the early years, he obtained a wisp of true dragon aura from signing in outside the imperial mausoleum in the palace, which could nurture his physical body at any time. Although the improvement was not great in a short period of time, the advantage was that it was endless. After accumulating for many years, it was definitely very objective. In myths and legends, there were martial artists who broke through the void with their physical body. At that time, I thought it was just made up by later generations. The void is everywhere, but it can't be touched. How can one shatter it with the power of the physical body alone? But now it seems that if the physical body is really strong to the extreme, not to mention shattering the void, even shattering the entire world is nothing. Su Qin's expression was slightly emotional. Next, Su Qin returned to his usual life, signing in and cultivating every day. His life was very fulfilling. A year passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Princess Li Wan found Su Qin and said with a solemn face, "Third uncle, I feel like I'm about to break through. Break through? You've become a rank 8 martial artist?" Su Qin sized up Li Wan and nodded slightly. "I got it. You can start breaking through now. I'll take a look for you." "All right." Hearing this, Li Wan immediately began to break through in a hurry. Generally speaking, it was extremely important for a martial artist to break through a bottleneck. They would usually find an absolutely safe place to break through by themselves and not allow anyone to disturb them. This was because when a cultivator was breaking through, their entire body's aura and mind would fuse into their body, so they would not be on guard against the outside world. At this time, if there was an outsider present, it was equivalent to controlling this martial artist's life and death. And the fact that Li Wan had broken through in front of Su Qin without any hesitation meant that he had absolute trust in Su Qin. Very soon, the inner force in Li Wan's body circulated and faintly condensed into one. Su Qin casually glanced and knew that Li Wan's breakthrough was not a big problem. In fact, with the guidance of Su Qin, a fifth heaven venerable Arhat, and the supply of martial arts resources from the entire royal family, if Li Wan had an accident breaking through to rank 8 martial artists, there would probably be no rank 8 martial artists in the world. As expected. A moment later, Li Wan's aura began to calm down. "Third uncle, I've broken through?" Li Wan opened his eyes wide and looked at Su Qin with a face full of joy. "Almost. You're now rank 8, Su Qin said. After receiving Su Qin's acknowledgement, Li Wan was obviously happier. His eyes were smiling into the shape of a crescent moon. "In the future, I must become a powerful martial artist and protect the Empire of Tang from being bullied by others." Li Wan waved his small fists, his face full of fighting spirit. Su Qin said from the side, "If you want to protect the Empire of Tang, you need at least peak grade 1 strength. Can you do it?" When these words came out, Li Wan was obviously hit, and his small face immediately sank. A peak grade 1 great grandmaster is in existence that is about to reach the end of the 9th grade martial Dao. Looking at the world, there are only a few of them. But for Li Wan, who has just entered grade 8, and has not even completely crossed the lower realm, peak grade 1 great grandmaster is too far away. One must know that martial Dao cultivation is more difficult the further one goes. The lower 3 realms and middle 3 realms can be pushed up with resources, but the upper 3 realms, especially between grade 1 great grandmaster and peak grade 1 great grandmaster, resources are not enough. As for the final peak grade 1 to legend or arhat, luck is even more needed. If your luck is not enough and you cannot grasp the chi between heaven and earth, even if you are grade 1 great perfection, you will be trapped in this realm. In the past, if Su Qin had not resisted the power of heaven and earth with his own strength, it would have been impossible for him to grasp the chi so quickly and break through to venerable Arhat. At the same time, inside the Long Life Temple, the Emperor of Tang Li Sheng frowned. "It's been a year. It's been a year, Why hasn't the blood-kill gate assassin been found yet? The Emperor of Tang Lixing kept pacing back and forth, thinking quickly. During this year, the Emperor of Tang Lixing tried various ways to attract the blood-kill gate assassin, such as opening the 4 gates, transferring the Forbidden Army from the Imperial Palace, and even using himself as bait. But the result was no result at all. It was as if the blood-kill gate assassin really disappeared into thin air. Your Majesty, could it be that person who made a move? The Forbidden Army commander next to him said cautiously. That person? The Emperor of Tang was silent. The Emperor of Tang naturally knew who that person referred to by the Forbidden Army commander. I heard that as early as a year ago, the blood-kill gate dismissed their inner disciples. Obviously, the blood-kill gate master was afraid. The Forbidden Army commander seemed to think of something and whispered. In other words, the blood-kill gate has confirmed that the assassin's assassination failed and died in the Imperial Palace. I see. The Emperor of Tang pondered for a while and nodded slightly. In truth, he had already thought of this idea before the Imperial Army commander had even voiced it. Because the blood-kill gate assassin disappeared too thoroughly. The Emperor of Tang could not think of any other possibility except that someone took action and killed him secretly. Whether the assassin is alive or dead, the patrols in the Imperial Palace cannot be lax. The Emperor of Tang glanced at the Forbidden Army commander and said, As you wish. The Forbidden Army commander respectfully left the Palace of Immortals. Outside the Right Spring Square, Su Qin sent off Li Wan and turned to enter the Right Spring Square. In a year, I have reached the peak of the 5th heaven. It's time to prepare for the breakthrough. Su Qin sat cross-legged and thought silently in his heart. His breakthrough was not comparable to Li Wan's breakthrough from the 9th heaven to the 8th heaven. Every breakthrough of Venerable Arhat involved the physical body, divine sense, and true essence, and could not be careless in the slightest. Even Su Qin had to wait until everything was safe before he began to break through. Chapter 155. In the Right Spring Square. Su Qin sat cross-legged, his thoughts fluctuating. After entering the 6th heavenly layer, with my current cultivation speed, I can enter the 7th heavenly layer in at most 10 years. Grab. Su Qin thought leisurely. Whether it's Venerable Arhat or a legend, once they reach the 7th heavenly layer, it means that they have truly set foot on the peak of this realm. After the 7th heavenly layer, my cultivation speed will inevitably slow down again. Maybe I should prepare for the future? Su Qin's eyes were deep. When he first entered the realm of Venerable Arhat, he felt that his cultivation speed was not as fast as before. If it weren't for the glazed golden core and other holy pills from the Bodhi court in time, Su Qin would still be wandering around the 1st and 2nd heavenly layer, and at most, he would start to touch the 3rd heavenly layer. After coming to the Imperial Palace, Su Qin received innate spirit liquid, blood Bodhi, vermilion fruit, and other spirit liquids and spirit fruits, which once again increased his cultivation speed. In this way, he could reach the 5th heavenly layer in just over 10 years. Su Qin can already imagine that when he becomes the 7th heavenly layer Arhat, whether it's innate spirit liquid or blood Bodhi vermilion fruit, the effect on him will definitely be greatly reduced. This is not to say that innate spirit liquid and blood Bodhi vermilion fruit are not good, but Su Qin's level has increased. When you have 10 copper coins, every 10 copper coins increase your wealth will double, and you will be overjoyed. But when you have 10,000 copper coins, if you increase your wealth by 10 copper coins, I'm afraid you won't notice it if you're not careful. In the following time, Su Qin continued to enter the state of signing in and cultivating. In addition, he would occasionally give advice to Li Wan. And during this period, the Emperor of Tang finally integrated the fiefdoms of the 10 kings and firmly held these fiefdoms in his hands. At this time, the Emperor of Tang finally fell into a daze, not knowing whether to continue to implement the order of pushing grace. When the 10 kings still existed, the Emperor of Tang needed to push the Edict of Grace to provoke the disciples of the kings to be hostile to each other. But now, even the top 10 fiefdoms had fallen into the hands of the Emperor of Tang. They had completely returned to the control of the Empire of Tang. Was there still a need to continue implementing the order of pushing grace? The Emperor of Tang tossed and turned in bed for several nights before he finally ran out of the right spring square with a wine pot in his hand. Third brother. The Emperor of Tang waved his hand and shouted. Su Qin walked out of the right spring square and glanced at the Emperor of Tang. He immediately knew what had happened. Third brother. What do you think I should do? The Emperor of Tang and Su Qin sat facing each other and told Su Qin about the difficulties they had encountered. Who do you plan to give the top 10 fiefdoms to in the future? Su Qin did not answer the Emperor of Tang's question first. Instead, he asked, Who do you want to give the top 10 fiefdoms to? The Emperor of Tang was lost in thought. Indeed, this problem really needed to be considered. The top 10 fiefdoms were located at the border of the Empire of Tang. The purpose of their establishment was to resist the invasion of other countries. It was impossible for there to be no one in charge of the overall situation for such a long time. The Emperor of Tang thought for a long time and looked at Su Qin and asked tentatively, I plan to choose a few disciples of the royal family to manage them. Disciples of the royal family? Su Qin smiled and said casually, Aren't you afraid that they will also rebel one day? As soon as he said this, the Emperor of Tang's expression changed. Since the establishment of the Empire of Tang, there had been a rule that no disciple of the royal family was allowed to hold military power. The purpose of establishing this rule was to prevent internal strife in the royal family. If the Emperor of Tang really took the initiative to hand over the top 10 fiefdoms to the disciples of the royal family, he was afraid that he would be the second vassal king. Then I will send a few loyal subjects to manage them. The Emperor of Tang was silent for a long time this time and said, Subjects? Loyal and devoted? Su Qin shook his head and said lightly, How long can you guarantee their loyalty? 10 years? 20 years? Or 30 years? Even if the subjects you send are loyal for a lifetime, what about their next generation? How can they be loyal to the fiefdoms? The Emperor of Tang heard this and frowned. Then I will order that the position of vassal king cannot be inherited through father and son? The Emperor of Tang said in a deep voice. Su Qin raised his head slightly and looked out of the right spring square. People are selfish. If they have a rich life, of course, they hope that their descendants will have a rich life. I see. I think too much. After a long time, the Emperor of Tang sighed softly. If we look at the long term, no one can compare to the third brother. The Emperor of Tang looked at Su Qin with eyes full of sincere admiration. Whether it was him or the civil and military officials, they only saw the Empire of Tang, but Su Qin saw the Empire of Tang thousands of years later. Third brother, do you want to enter the court as an official? As long as you are willing, the position of Prime Minister will be yours, third brother. The Emperor of Tang thought of something and said seriously. The power of the Prime Minister was so great that it could even replace the Emperor to exercise the imperial power. As early as 200 years ago, it was abolished by the Emperor of Tang. However, the Emperor of Tang was willing to re-establish the position of Prime Minister for Su Qin, which showed how much he valued Su Qin. There's no need. I'm used to being an idle person. Su Qin refused without even thinking about it. If he was interested in power, would he have stayed in the palace for more than 10 years with the strength of Venerable Arhut? Since third brother is unwilling, then forget it. The Emperor of Tang sighed softly, as if he had expected it. Over the years, it was not the first time that the Emperor of Tang had invited Su Qin, but every time, he was refused without hesitation. Sometimes, the Emperor of Tang really wondered if Su Qin was the kind of saint who valued power over nothing. Except for saints, who could resist the temptation of being the Prime Minister? The two chatted for a while and soon talked about Chang'an, the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. Speaking of which, the Empire of Tang has been passed down for more than 500 years. When Taizu accidentally established the Empire of Tang, I'm afraid he didn't expect it to exist for so long. The Emperor of Tang shook his head and sighed. Accident? Yes. Su Qin raised his eyebrows and looked at the Emperor of Tang. What accident? I forgot, third brother, you don't know about this. The Emperor of Tang saw Su Qin's reaction and immediately said, "I don't know if it's true or not. It's all from the mouth of the old people in the palace. There aren't even any relevant books." When Emperor Lixing said this, he paused for a while and lowered his voice. "I heard that the great ancestor never thought of establishing a country at all." Never thought of establishing a country? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. He vaguely felt that he was about to come into contact with a big secret. In fact, as early as when Su Qin learned that Taizu of the Empire of Tang was a martial arts legend, there was a doubt in his mind. Why would a martial arts legend want to establish a country? For his descendants? If Taizu of the Empire of Tang really wanted his descendants to pass down the legacy for generations, he would never choose to establish a country. Instead, he would establish a family or simply a martial arts sect in the world. A century-old empire, a 1,000-year-old family. Throughout history, almost no dynasty had lasted for more than 1,000 years, but often some families had lasted for more than 1,000 years. And a martial arts sect like the Shaolin Temple had been passed down for thousands of years. If Taizu of the Empire of Tang had been the emperor at the beginning, then it would be fine. But the Empire of Tang's Taizu had clearly established the Empire of Tang after becoming a martial arts legend. Just as Su Qin was thinking, the Emperor of Tang's voice slowly came. It is said that the reason why Taizu established the Empire of Tang was because he discovered a secret in Chang'an. Chapter 156. Chang'an City? Some secret? Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. That's right. The Emperor of Tang nodded slightly and said, "But I think it should be fake. Chang'an City is big, but if there really is a secret, how can it be hidden for 500 years? The Emperor of Tang said matter-of-factly. For more than 500 years, the outer city of Chang'an City had been rebuilt many times. If there were any secrets, they would have been exposed long ago. As for the inner city, although it had always been the same, as the residence of the royal family, there must be an army patrolling and guarding at all times. In this case, there was no secret." "I see." Su Qin's expression didn't change. After a while, the Emperor of Tang returned to the Palace of Immortals. After the Emperor of Tang left completely, Su Qin slowly got up, took a step, and disappeared. At the same time, thousands of feet high in the sky, Su Qin stood in the air and looked down at the entire Chang'an City. Whether it was the venerable Arhat or the martial arts legends, even if they were only at the first heaven, they could ride the wind and fly freely. Let alone Su Qin, who was at the peak of the fifth heaven. The secret of Chang'an City? I'd like to see what the secret of Chang'an City is. With a thought, Su Qin's huge divine thought quickly spread out and covered the entire Chang'an City in an instant. At this moment, any action of the millions of people in Chang'an City fell into Su Qin's mind. It was as if he had turned his palm over and saw everything. Although Su Qin had lived in the palace for so many years, he would scan Chang'an City with his divine thought every once in a while. But it was the first time for him to be so careful. Buzz! The terrifying divine thought quickly spread to every corner of Chang'an City like running water. No? Su Qin frowned. The next moment, the divine thought condensed again and began to spread slowly underground. 100 meters. 200 meters. 300 meters. 500 meters. 1,000 meters. Finally, 2,500 meters below the ground of Chang'an City, Su Qin's divine thoughts suddenly sensed a strange aura. This is devil chi? Su Qin narrowed his eyes. Su Qin had seen this kind of devil chi in many places, such as the Devil Suppression Tower and the Shaolin Temple, and the Devil Lord who had killed his way into Shaolin. However, Su Qin did not expect that he would find this kind of devil chi under Chang'an, the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. Moreover, compared to the Demon Suppressing Pagoda and the Demon Master, this strand of demon chi underground was even purer. To be precise, although the two were both demon chi, they were as different as heaven and earth. Just like Arhat's true essence and rank 9 inner strength. Interesting. Su Qin continued to probe the ground with his divine sense. Finally, 3,000 meters underground, Su Qin suddenly discovered a magnificent palace through his telepathic thoughts. This majestic palace occupied an area of several miles. It was empty, but there was a black well in the center, and the strands of devilry were spreading out from this black well. When Su Qin saw this scene, his figure disappeared again. After a while, in front of the majestic palace 3,000 meters underground, Su Qin's figure quietly appeared. It's so deep underground, I'm afraid that even a peak grade 1 great grandmaster would find it difficult to come in. Su Qin glanced at the majestic palace and thought silently in his heart. That black well. Su Qin thought for a moment, and walked towards the center of the palace unhurriedly. He had already scanned the inside and outside of the palace with his divine sense. Except for the black well in the center, everything else was normal. Soon, Su Qin came in front of a stone tablet that was 10 meters high. There were many characters engraved on the stone tablet, all of which were written in ancient characters that were thousands of years old. They were obscure and difficult to understand, but this was not difficult for Su Qin. As early as in the Shaolin Temple, he had read the entire scripture pavilion, including the evolution of the characters. The appearance of the devil's well connected to the cave world, and countless devils poured into the world. The world was in chaos. Fortunately, the devil's well could only accommodate devils below the myth realm. After the bloody struggle of countless ancestors, the devil's well was finally sealed by the imperial dynasty, blocking the passage between the cave world and the world. Ancient characters flashed one by one, letting Su Qin know the cause and effect. According to the stone tablet, a large number of devils suddenly appeared in the world thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. And these devils came from this devil's well. On the other side of the devil's well was the cave world, which was the real world of the devil race. It seems that the level of this cave world is very high, at least much higher than this continent. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. According to the records on the stone tablet, thousands or tens of thousands of years ago, that era should have been the era of martial artists, and there were more than 10 myths in the world. In the wonderful book garden. But in the end, they were still directly crippled by the devils who poured out of the devil's well. It should be known that the devil's well could only accommodate devils below the myth realm. In other words, the humans at that time were only facing a group of first-grade devils at most. And under the premise of at least 10 myths, the humans were still defeated. One could imagine how ferocious the cave world under the devil's well was. No wonder Chang'an City is the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. It turns out that with Chang'an City as the center, the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck can barely seal the devil's well. Su Qin thought silently. At this moment, he probably figured out why the Empire of Tang's founder wanted to establish a country. It was nothing more than worrying about losing the suppression of the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck, causing the seal to loosen, and finally, devils to enter the world. Keep reading. Su Qin slowly looked at the stone tablet. The records on the ancient tablet, in addition to introducing the horror of the devil's well, also talked about the cave world connected to the devil's well. Since the devils in the cave world could come up through the devil's well, then the people above could naturally enter the cave world through the devil's well. During the fight against the devil clan, many martial arts legends had sneaked into the underground devil's den, only to find that the world connected to the devil's well was far superior to this continent in terms of scale and high-level combat power. And in the cave world, a civilization similar to that of the human race had also developed, and in the vast area, there were powerful countries one after another. All the myths who had entered the cave world concluded that the mushroom demon cave world had existed for at least 100,000 years, or even more. After discovering this, the myths who had sneaked in were scared out of their wits and quickly returned, and then sealed the devil's well with the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck, completely cutting off the connection with the cave world. Su Qin had a rough idea of what happened next. The invasion of the devils directly crippled the martial artists of this continent, and even a few myths had fallen. The remaining myths either hid or disappeared. Time? At least 100,000 years? Su Qin's eyes lit up when he saw this. Chapter 157. At least 100,000 years? How much Tao accumulation would there be after such a long time? Su Qin's heart skipped a beat. Just now, he was worried about whether his cultivation speed would slow down after he stepped into the seventh heaven of Arhat, and whether he should sign in somewhere else. Grab. But now, the appearance of the underground cave world made Su Qin feel like there was a glimmer of hope. For others, the underground cave world is filled with devil chi, and it's not suitable for venerable Arhat to live in. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. This was also the reason why the legends who sneaked into the underground cave world escaped. In addition to realizing the power of the underground cave world, they also realized that it would be difficult for them to survive there. Although legends have reached the level of Chi Eater, the premise is that there is enough world's essence Chi to absorb. But there is probably no such thing as world's essence Chi in the underground cave world. But I'm different. As early as when I was in the Shaolin Temple, I signed in and obtained the Devil Buddha Golden Body, and the most terrifying thing about the Devil Buddha Golden Body is that it can transform devil chi into one's own true essence without any damage. Su Qin's eyes became brighter and brighter. With the Devil Buddha Golden Body, the underground cave world was probably no different from the outside world for Su Qin. As long as Su Qin was willing, he could transform his true essence into devil chi and easily disguise himself as a myth realm great demon. Not bad, but there's no hurry now. Wait until I break through and reach the sixth heaven. Su Qin took a deep look at the majestic palace, turned around, and left. Imperial Palace. In the right spring square. Su Qin sat cross-legged. I originally wanted to break through in a few days. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and the true essence in his body slowly circulated. Su Qin stretched out his right hand, and an extremely exquisite jade gourd suddenly appeared in front of him. Gulp. Su Qin pulled out the cork of the jade gourd and poured the liquid into his mouth. If other martial arts legends saw how Su Qin treated the extremely precious primordial spiritual liquid by pouring it down his throat, they would probably be so jealous that their eyes would turn red. The primordial spirit liquid was condensed from heaven and earth, and was extremely rare. Ordinary martial arts legends might not be able to find a few drops even after spending decades or centuries. In the end, when it came to Su Qin, he was actually absorbing it by the bottle. 1. As the large mouthful of innate spirit liquid entered his body, Su Qin's body suddenly emitted a rumbling sound as a large amount of true essence continuously converged and contracted, as if undergoing some kind of transformation. However, Su Qin was still not satisfied. He picked up the jade gourd again and poured all the primordial spirit liquid into his mouth. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, the innate spirit liquid turned into an endless amount of heaven and earth yuan qi, filling every part of Su Qin's body. Whoosh! Suck! In the next moment, the past Amitabha Sutra circulated madly, ceaselessly absorbing the natural spirit liquid and transforming it into extremely pure true essence that continued to flow through his meridians. A few hours later, Su Qin's body began to glow, illuminating the surroundings and setting off Su Qin vaguely, making him look like a real immortal god that could not be looked at directly, and could not be guessed. Not enough! Su Qin frowned slightly, and waved his hands slightly. Suddenly, at least a dozen red fruits flew out and fell into Su Qin's mouth. Boom! It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The massive amount of spirit chi gathered by dozens of red fruits was enough to cause an ordinary martial arts legend to explode in an instant. However, at this moment, Su Qin stood still and continued to absorb the spirit chi of the red fruits. In the blink of an eye, the aura in Su Qin's body skyrocketed like a great river, filling up the void and suppressing everything. Swoosh! Is this the 6th level of heaven? Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and looked at his hands as he muttered to himself. At this moment, Su Qin could feel that his body was filled with a power that could destroy the world. Of course, Su Qin knew that this was an illusion. Not to mention the 6th level of heaven Arhat, even the 9th level of heaven Arhat was far from being able to destroy the world. However, even if he could not destroy the world, it was more than enough to destroy the entire Chang'an city. If the 6th level of heaven is so powerful, how powerful would the 7th level of heaven be? As for the last earth immortal, What kind of existence would it be? Su Qin was fascinated. However, although Su Qin was very emotional, he did not forget about the important matter. Let's go to the underground palace again. Su Qin's mind moved, and when he appeared again, he was at the entrance of the majestic underground palace. Next, Su Qin walked towards the black well in the center with ease. Soon, Su Qin stood in front of the black well. On the surface of the black well, there was a faint golden aura that sealed the well tightly. The moment Su Qin saw the golden aura, he recognized that it should be the power of the dynasty's draconic providence. If it weren't for the suppression of the dynasty's draconic providence, this place would have been occupied by the demon race long ago, and Su Qin wouldn't have been able to discover it at all. I can feel that this dynasty's draconic providence doesn't reject me, and as long as I want to, I can easily pass through the seal of the dynasty's draconic providence. Su Qin touched his chin. Could it be because of the true dragon chi in my body? Su Qin guessed in his heart, but he was more than half sure. Although he had signed in a lot of Emperor Path cultivation techniques in the past few years, he hadn't cultivated much. In his entire body, only the true dragon chi had something to do with the dynasty's draconic providence. And I also faintly feel that there seems to be a living creature on the other side of the well? Could it be that there are demons guarding over there? Su Qin's eyes were thoughtful. Although he realized that there were demons on the other side of the well, Su Qin wasn't afraid at all. With his current strength, even in the underground cave world, he was definitely considered a powerhouse. And the aura of the demons that Su Qin felt wasn't even in the upper realm. At most, it was lingering in the middle realm. Let's lure them over first. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and he suddenly made a decision. Immediately afterward, Su Qin raised his right hand and slowly touched the dynasty's draconic providence above the devil's well. Suddenly, a gap appeared in the dynasty's draconic providence that had sealed the devil's well tightly. Walala! A large amount of terrifying demonic chi gushed out crazily. At the same time, a wild laughter came from the depths of the devil's well. Ha 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 ha! The seal has loosened, delicious human world, this demon is coming! Two demonic shadows jumped out of the gap in an instant, looking extremely excited. I heard from several lords that the flesh and blood of the human world has a great effect on our demonic arts. This time, we can give it a try. Yes, only we know about the seal here, and we can completely occupy this entrance alone. After the two demonic shadows jumped out, they were talking with anticipation. Huh! This place? One of the demonic shadows saw the majestic hall around them and was slightly taken aback. That is? The other demonic shadow suddenly saw a man not far away looking at them with calm eyes. Human? However, before the two demonic shadows could react, they saw the man with calm eyes slowly stretch out his right hand and slightly grab towards them. Rumble. The two demonic shadows only felt that the world was collapsing. Everywhere they looked, the palm that was slowly grabbing them was getting bigger and bigger, filling their vision. Chapter 158. They're similar to the human race. Su Qin looked at the two demons who were knocked unconscious by him as soon as they came out, and judged in his heart. These two demons were about 2 meters tall, with faint demon scales on their cheeks. As for other places, they were the same as humans. I thought it was some strange shape. Grab. Su Qin nodded slightly, quite satisfied. TSK. If he really wanted to go to the cave world to sign in, he would definitely disguise himself as a demon. If the demons looked very different from humans, Su Qin would have a headache, but now it seems that there was no problem in this regard. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked at the two unconscious demons and said, Wake up. 1. The eyes of the two demons moved, and they slowly woke up. Where is this? The two demons opened their eyes and were shocked. They only felt a palm reaching through the sky just now. As for what happened next, they didn't know. Now that they suddenly woke up, they suddenly realized that the situation was not what they imagined. I ask you answer? Su Qin looked at the two demons and said. As early as the stone tablet outside, Su Qin learned the demon language. After half a day of absorption, Although he was not very proficient, there was no problem in communicating with the demons. Yes, sir? The two demons looked at each other, feeling bitter in their hearts. At this moment, how could they not know their situation? After a while, Su Qin got everything he wanted to know, and raised his hand, and under the desperate eyes of the two demons, he turned them into powder. It turns out that the cave world connected to this demon well corresponds to a place called Demon Cloud City? Su Qin's thoughts slowly rose and fell as he thought silently in his heart. The strength of these two demons is low, not even in the upper realm. They belong to the bottom of the cave world, so they guard a certain seal and don't leave, just thinking that if the seal loosens, they can take the opportunity to enter the human world, and according to them, the city lord of the Demon Cloud City is the strongest person in the vicinity, belonging to the Demon King level existence. And the Demon King is equal to the Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend. Su Qin's thoughts raced. This was all the information Su Qin got from the two demons. As for other information, such as what was above the Demon King level, what were the big cities outside the Demon Cloud City, and so on, the two demons had no idea at all. But I have at least confirmed one thing. Not to mention how long the cave world has been passed down, this Demon Cloud City alone has experienced more than 10,000 years. According to the Division of Heritage, it is almost no weaker than the Emperor of Tang's palace. Su Qin was shocked. Looks like I'll have to make a trip to the underground cave. Su Qin sat down cross-legged. With a thought, the divine sense in his body began to divide. This kind of division was not like strands of divine sense, but Su Qin had almost separated a small part of his divine sense. If it were other Arhat, a martial arts legend, they would not be able to do this. How important was divine sense? Not to mention dividing a small part, even if it was divided into 1/10, it would be enough to make a martial arts legend depressed and their strength greatly reduced. But Su Qin was different. When he was in the forbidden area of the back mountain of the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin signed in and obtained the Devil Buddha's demonic will division parasitism technique, which could divide his own demonic will to a great extent. The Devil Buddha was suppressed and sealed for 900 years. In extreme despair, he still divided his demonic will every 100 years, broke free from the seal, and bewitched the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. One could imagine the horror of this secret technique. What Su Qin was doing at the moment was not exactly the demonic will division parasitism technique, but a brand new secret technique improved on the basis of this secret technique, which could divide nearly half of his divine sense. This nearly half of his divine sense was completely independent, equivalent to Su Qin's divine sense incarnation, and would not have a time limit like the Devil Buddha. Several hours later, in front of Su Qin, another Su Qin that looked exactly the same appeared. The same aura, the same appearance, the same true essence fluctuations, and the same divine sense circulation. But if someone observed carefully, they would find that the body of the other Su Qin was very illusory, as if it did not have a physical body at all. It's done! I've finally divided it! Su Qin's face turned pale, and a trace of joy flashed in his eyes. Even for him, dividing nearly half of his divine sense was a great loss. If it weren't for the thousands of divine pills in the system space that could restore divine sense, Su Qin probably wouldn't have dared to do so. Next, it's very important. Su Qin's expression was extremely solemn. With a stroke of his right hand, he directly cut off a piece of flesh from his body. And how terrifying was Su Qin's physical body? As soon as this piece of flesh was cut off, the wound began to heal. Countless crystal clear blood flowed, and in a few breaths, it was restored to its original state. Next, Su Qin looked at the piece of flesh that he had cut off. Go! Su Qin said silently in his heart. Suddenly, this piece of blood slowly flew to the opposite divine sense incarnation. The most critical step. Su Qin looked at the piece of flesh. Divine sense! Flesh rebirth! Su Qin just had this thought. The piece of flesh in front of the divine sense incarnation began to vibrate, and countless granulation sprouts spread from the edge of the flesh, slowly spreading to the surroundings. The flesh rebirth divine sense was the divine sense Su Qin obtained from the White Jade Square in the Imperial Palace. It was also Su Qin's second divine sense besides the Eye of Truth. This divine sense can restore the physical body to a great extent, and it can be said to be half immortal. However, Su Qin was not sure if this piece of flesh could be reborn into a complete physical body. Because the premise of flesh rebirth to restore the physical body is that the vital parts are not injured. Although Su Qin did not suffer any injuries now, he didn't know if he could rebuild a physical body with this piece of flesh. Time passed slowly. This time, Su Qin waited far longer than the time for the divine sense incarnation. After more than half a day, a physical body that was exactly the same as him appeared in front of Su Qin. And at this moment, the divine sense incarnation next to him got up and slowly merged into this physical body. After a while, this physical body slowly opened its eyes. It's done! Su Qin had a very strange feeling at this moment. The two physical bodies have independent divine sense, but they both have the same consciousness and thoughts. It was as if he had an extra pair of eyes. This should be considered an external incarnation great ability, right? Su Qin whispered to himself. In fact, Su Qin didn't know at this moment whether this was an incarnation or not, because his control of these two bodies was like his left hand and right hand, without any obscure delay. Even from a certain point of view, Su Qin couldn't tell which of these two bodies was the clone, and which was the main body. Go to the underground cave world for me to take a look. As soon as Su Qin had this thought, the opposite Su Qin smiled slightly, turned around, and walked towards the Devil's Well not far away. Chi-La. The dragon providence at the mouth of the Devil's Well fluctuated slightly, forming an exit as tall as a person. Su Qin took a step forward and entered the underground cave world through this exit. Chapter 159. Chang'an City. In a majestic underground hall, Su Qin sat cross-legged beside the Black Devil's Well. What a pity! Even with my divine sense, I can only create one divine sense incarnation at most. If I create more, it will have irreversible effects. Su Qin thought silently. The divine sense incarnation was fundamentally different from an ordinary wisp of divine sense. The wisp of divine sense that Su Qin left in his family Su was just a pure wisp of divine sense. With the passage of time, it will be consumed. Even if Su Qin dies, all the stray divine sense will quickly dissipate and cease to exist. But the divine sense incarnation was different. Strictly speaking, the divine sense incarnation was already a separate individual. Although both the divine sense incarnation and Su Qin's original body shared the same consciousness, even if Su Qin died due to some accident, the divine sense incarnation could still continue to exist. In short, the divine sense incarnation was equivalent to Su Qin's second life. In fact, even if he didn't find the cave world, Su Qin was prepared to create a divine sense incarnation during this period of time. Even if the incarnation encounters a powerful enemy in the cave world, it won't be dangerous for me. If I lose an incarnation, it won't take long for me to cultivate it back. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. This was also the reason why Su Qin chose the cave world instead of overseas. If Su Qin let the incarnation wander overseas, if he was chased by a powerful enemy, it was very likely that the enemy would be led to this continent. But the cave world, even if it's an Earth Immortal Realm demon, it's impossible to cross the Devil's Well and pose a threat to Su Qin's true body. Therefore, Su Qin's situation was always absolutely safe. I wonder what kind of surprise this cave world will give me. Su Qin's face was full of expectation. That's right. This Devil's Well has definitely existed for more than 10,000 years. Even the existence of Chang'an City can't compare to it. I should be able to sign in there. Su Qin turned his gaze and looked at the Black Devil's Well next to him. The reason why Chang'an City was the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties was because it was convenient to extract the power of draconic providence from all the dynasties to suppress the demonic well. Therefore, the Devil's Well must have appeared before Chang'an City was built. Thinking of this, Su Qin walked to the Devil's Well and said in his heart, "System, sign in." Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the 9 notes of the demonic path. 9 notes of the demonic Tao? Su Qin did not look surprised at all. This demon's well was connected to the cave world. Signing in here was most likely related to the cave world. The next moment, Su Qin's mind surged with a large amount of insights regarding the 9 notes of the demonic path. Words filled with monstrous demonic energy flashed through his mind. This? Su Qin's pupils shrank slightly. Originally, Su Qin thought that the 9 notes of the demonic Tao was a pure demonic cultivation technique, but from the looks of it now, he had underestimated it. Although the core of the 9 notes of the demonic Tao was still the demonic Tao, the philosophy contained within could be said to encompass all things. With the demonic Tao as the foundation, he analyzed the myriad Taos of the world. This was the 9 notes of the demonic path. The 9 notes of the demonic path was not a divine technique. It didn't have any specific moves, but what it represented was far from what the demonic path could describe. There are thousands of great Taos, but all paths lead to the same destination. After comprehending the 9 notes of the demonic path for a while, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and sighed softly. Whether it was God or demon, immortal or demon, when cultivated to the extreme, the only difference was the manifestation of power, but the essence was the same. Su Qin didn't expect that the level of the 9 notes of the demonic path would be so high. It had a sense of transcendence. Among the countless techniques I have, I'm afraid that only the Buddha's palm can barely suppress it. Su Qin looked amazed. One must know that the Buddha's palm was claimed to be a personal technique of the Buddha, and it had some connection with the legendary Buddha. But what was the origin of the 9 notes of the demonic path? It was actually close to the level of the Buddha's palm. Not bad. I really made a profit this time. Su Qin nodded slightly, extremely satisfied. All this time, he had spent most of his free time comprehending the Buddha's palm, and he had long since gotten bored of it. Now that he had the 9 notes of the demonic path, he could change things up. Whether it was the Buddha's palm, or the 9 notes of the demonic path, the truth of the great path contained in them was definitely not as simple as the Buddhist path and the demonic path. They stood from the perspective of the Buddhist path and the demonic path, looking at the other great paths of the world. Su Qin was also comprehending the great paths of the world when he comprehended them, but the focus was different. There's no rush for now. I've divided nearly half of my divine will just now. I'll recover it first. Su Qin's heart moved, and a large number of pills suddenly appeared and were placed in front of him. For other martial arts legends, the consumption of divine will could only be slowly recovered by themselves. As for external pills and the like, pills that could recover divine will were extremely precious. Even if martial arts legends had them, they would carefully store them away and only use them at critical moments. I'll cultivate in seclusion here for the time being. Su Qin looked at the pills in front of him and thought silently in his heart. This majestic hall was located 3,000 meters underground. Unless Su Qin made a move and penetrated the ground, no matter how big the commotion, it would not affect the outside world. It was simply a perfect place for seclusion. At the same time, underground cave world. Su Qin raised his head and looked at the gray sky. This is the cave world? Su Qin's divine will slowly spread out, covering a radius of more than 10 miles. What a dense devil chi! Su Qin whispered to himself. In the cave world, devil chi was equivalent to the world's essence chi above. No wonder in the cave world, even the devils in the middle realm are at the bottom. Su Qin shook his head. In this environment, even a pig can become a martial artist after a long time. The environment was very important. Although there were some peerless geniuses that were hard to come by in tens of thousands of years who could continue to break through in extremely harsh environments, they were still very few. Or even none. The vast majority of creatures in the world needed to rely on the environment to continue to grow stronger. Perhaps the environment of the world could not determine the upper limit of the world, but it could definitely determine the lower limit of the world. Since the cave world has such a cultivation environment, why do they still want to spy on the human world? Su Qin seemed to have thought of something and frowned slightly. Originally, he thought that the environment of the cave world should be very harsh, which led to a large number of devils escaping from here, but now it seemed that this guess was not valid. For example, the people living in the capital of a dynasty like Chang'an City would not want to go to the remote countryside, unless there was something in the countryside that attracted them. It seems that the world I live in has many secrets that I don't know. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Chapter 160. Su Qin thought for a long time, but he really couldn't think of any place in the human world that was worth spying on. Living beings? Flesh and blood? These things may be greatly desired by low-level demons, but in the eyes of those real demon kings or even above demon kings, they were nothing. Su Qin comprehended the 9 notes of the demonic path, so he naturally knew that the so-called demons were also a kind of living beings. Their cultivation method was similar to that of humans, but the situation they displayed was different. And the demonic well that connected the underground demon cave to the human world was obviously the work of some powerful demons. In other words, even the truly powerful demons in the demon cave were also spying on everything in the human world. Forget it. Let's not think about this anymore. The most important thing now is to convert true essence into demonic power. Su Qin calmed down and looked around. At this moment, Su Qin's true essence was still circulating in Arhat's body. At first, he didn't feel anything, but after a long time, he faintly felt the pressure of the world on him. This kind of pressure wasn't the kind of suppression, but some kind of rejection. It was as if the underground demon cave world innately rejected any living beings that didn't cultivate the demonic path. Humph! If it was other venerable Arhat, or even great Arhat or earth immortals, they would have a headache in the face of this kind of oppression and rejection. They might even turn around and leave. Because this is not their home ground. If they stay here for a long time, their strength will be greatly reduced, and if they encounter a demon of the same level, it is very likely that they will completely die. But I'm different. Su Qin looked up at the sky, and a huge Buddha statue vaguely appeared in the depths of his eyes. Devil Buddha golden body! Rumble. In an instant, the huge Buddha statue in the depths of Su Qin's eyes suddenly changed. The left side was incomparably dark, and demonic energy rose, while the right side was dazzling with golden light, full of Buddha intent. It was the Devil Buddha golden body that Su Qin obtained from signing in the forbidden area of the back mountain of Shaolin Temple. The Devil Buddha golden body was the fundamental cultivation technique of the Devil Buddha from 900 years ago in Shaolin Temple, and it allowed one to freely switch between Buddha and demon. 1. Su Qin continued to operate the Devil Buddha golden body. In the blink of an eye, the golden Buddha in the depths of his eyes slowly turned pitch black, and a terrifying devil aura spread out in all directions. Dozens of li away from Su Qin, a group of demons from the demon cloud city suddenly opened their eyes and looked in a certain direction in shock. This aura, could it be that a demon king is coming to our demon cloud city? One of the demons muttered to himself with a look of horror on his face. Demon king! It's at least a high-level devil king! Another relatively old-age demon felt waves of emotion surging in his heart. The city lord of the demon cloud city was a demon king. He ruled over an area of 10,000 miles. Those who followed him would live and those who opposed him would die. His demon might was boundless. But in the eyes of this old-age demon, even the high and mighty city lord was inferior in front of that aura in the distance. One must know that the city lord has been in the demon king realm for hundreds of years. He has already cultivated to the extreme depths of this realm. Except for the legendary high-level demon king, the old-age demon couldn't think of anyone who could suppress the city lord in terms of aura. I'm afraid the demon cloud city will not be peaceful. The old-age demon glanced at the other demons and whispered. This time, we will leave. Don't come back for 100 years. Yes. The rest of the demons looked at each other, barely suppressing the shock in their hearts, and spoke in unison. Meng Yuan Empire. On the endless grassland. Ha 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 ha! Aura, I finally grasped that aura! A tall man looked up to the sky and roared, and a terrifying aura shook in all directions. When the people next to him saw this scene, they immediately knelt on the ground. "Congratulations to the Imperial Preceptor for taking the last step. You are invincible in the world." "Taking the last step?" The Imperial Preceptor turned his head and glanced at them, then shook his head and said, "I haven't yet, but now that the three elements have merged into one, I have the aura. I will be able to take that step in a year or a few months." The Imperial Preceptor's tone showed endless joy. Since stepping into the martial Tao, he has been waiting for this day for more than 100 years. Now that his wish has been fulfilled, how could he not be happy? The people next to him looked at each other, and their expressions were also very excited. How many years, a legend has finally walked out of the endless grassland. At this moment, the Imperial Preceptor's expression gradually calmed down. He looked at the people and said, "Tell the Emperor, in 2 years at the latest, I will personally meet the legend of Chang'an City. If the Ming Yuan Empire wants to unify the world and achieve a great cause, they must face the legend of Chang'an City." And this day, the Imperial Preceptor couldn't wait any longer. Although the Imperial Preceptor doesn't know the depth of the legend of Chang'an City, since the other party hasn't left this continent, his strength should be between the first and second heavenly layer. The Imperial Preceptor is confident in his vitality. His cultivation method is good at killing, and he carries the fate of the entire Ming Yuan Empire. Even if he can't defeat the legend, there is no problem in retreating. At the same time, the Emperor of Tang's palace, Cunning Palace. Empress Su Yun drank a mouthful of ginseng soup, her face slightly pale. During this time, Su Yun has been feeling a little uncomfortable, but the imperial doctors in the palace have not been able to find the reason. Su Yun can only guess that this winter is too cold. "It's another winter day." Su Yun looked out of the window. At this moment, snow was faintly falling outside, and said softly, "Empress, this is the soup made by the imperial doctors. It is said that it can improve blood circulation and warm up the body. It should make Empress feel better." At this moment, a palace maid carefully walked over and brought a bowl of steaming soup to Su Yun. "Actually, I'm fine." Su Yun shook her head and said, "There's no need to trouble the imperial doctors." In fact, Su Yun has drunk a lot of this soup during this time, but it has no effect on her body. She still feels uncomfortable. "Empress, your health is important," the palace maid couldn't help but say. Although Su Yun is the empress, she is very kind to them, so all the palace maids and eunuchs in the Cunning Palace hope that Su Yun can get better as soon as possible. Seeing this, Su Yun couldn't refuse. Su Yun gently picked up the soup and was about to drink it. However, at this moment, Su Yun's face suddenly turned as white as paper, and even the hand holding the soup was trembling. Su Yun wanted to speak, but she felt as if her throat was being choked, and she couldn't spit out a word. Crack! The bowl of soup Su Yun was holding fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Seeing this scene, the palace maid's heart thumped, and her face also turned pale. She immediately shouted for help in a panic. "Oh no, Empress is sick!" Chapter 161. The Empress had fallen ill. The news quickly reached the ears of the Emperor of Tang, Li Sheng. Immediately, the Emperor of Tang put down everything in his hands and rushed to the Palace of Earthly Tranquility. Yuner, are you okay?" The Emperor of Tang walked to the bed and asked with concern. Su Yun's complexion had recovered a little. Although she was not as good as a normal person, she could barely speak. "Your Majesty, I'm fine." "Fine? You're like this, and you call it fine?" The Emperor of Tang suppressed the anger in his heart, and turned to look at the imperial physician. "What's going on? What's wrong with Yuner's body?" When the imperial physician heard the Emperor of Tang's tone, he trembled and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, Her Majesty's body, Her Majesty's body." The imperial physician repeated the words for a long time, but he kept hesitating, not knowing how to say them out loud. When the Emperor of Tang heard this, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. If Su Yun was only feeling unwell, the imperial physician would definitely not have such an expression. Only if the imperial physician found it difficult to deal with would he be so hesitant. Speak. I'm listening. The Emperor of Tang took a deep breath and calmed down. Your Majesty, there is a foreign object in Her Majesty's body. It is this foreign object that is constantly devouring Her Majesty's vitality and consuming Her Majesty's essence, causing Her Majesty to be like this. The imperial physician braced himself and said, That's not what I want to hear. The Emperor of Tang looked coldly at the imperial physician. Your Majesty. The imperial physician said carefully, If you want Her Majesty to recover, you can only completely eradicate the foreign object in her body. However, this foreign object is produced in Her Majesty's body and is equivalent to Her Majesty's flesh and blood. When the imperial physician said this, he paused for a moment and continued in a trembling voice. I can't think of any way to remove this foreign object. When the imperial physician finished speaking, he knelt on the ground. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. You should die. The Emperor of Tang left these words and then turned back to Su Yuyun. Yunyang, you must be fine. There are so many imperial doctors in the palace. If one can't do it, I'll change to another one. If they can't do it, I'll cut them all down. Then I'll offer a reward to whoever can cure you. The Emperor of Tang kept comforting Su Yuyun. Your Majesty. You don't have to say any more. Su Yuyun shook her head and said softly, I know my own body well. That imperial physician did nothing wrong. Su Yuyun tried her best not to cry. Because she knew that once she cried, the blow to Emperor Li Xing would be unprecedentedly great. What do you mean nothing wrong? The Emperor of Tang held Su Yuyun's wrist. I spend so much of my salary every year to support them. If something really happened to you, why should I support them? The Emperor of Tang's voice was hoarse, but every word rang in the ears of everyone around. When the imperial physician who was kneeling on the ground heard these words, his body trembled even more. He had a feeling that the Emperor of Tang would really order all the imperial physicians to be cut down. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, Her Highness is not incurable. Her Highness can be saved. Her Highness can still be saved. The imperial physician immediately shouted. Oh? The Emperor of Tang heard this and glanced at the imperial physician. Think carefully. If you dare to talk nonsense in front of me, you won't be the only one to die. The Emperor of Tang's words made the imperial physician's scalp tingle. The imperial physician knew what the Emperor of Tang meant. The crime of deceiving the Emperor would implicate 9 generations. If his next answer did not satisfy the Emperor of Tang, the consequences could be imagined. Your Majesty. This humble subject is not talking nonsense. This humble subject would not dare to talk nonsense. The imperial physician's teeth were chattering. None of the imperial physicians in the imperial palace can cure the imperial concubine's body. The imperial physician gulped and said loudly, But even if we imperial physicians can't cure her, the imperial uncle can. The imperial uncle saved His Majesty last time. His medical skills are divine, far surpassing us imperial physicians. I think the imperial uncle must have a way. As soon as the imperial physician finished speaking, the Emperor of Tang was stunned. Then joy appeared on his face. That's right. I actually forgot about the third brother. The Emperor of Tang's eyes lit up as he muttered to himself. The yin qi that entered Su Yuyun's body and the anger that attacked his heart last time were all cured by Su Qin. In the entire palace, if there was anyone who was most likely to cure Su Yuyun, it could only be Su Qin. The more the Emperor of Tang thought about it, the more hopeful he became. What are you waiting for? Go to the right spring square and invite the third brother over. The Emperor of Tang glanced at the eunuchs around him and said in a low voice. He wanted to go and find Su Qin himself, but Su Yuyun was extremely weak at the moment. The Emperor of Tang could not bear to leave. Yes. Hearing this, a young eunuch immediately rushed to the right spring square. At the same time, in the majestic underground palace, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, a smile on his face. She's finally recovered. Su Qin exhaled softly. In order to create a divine sense clone, he forcibly divided nearly half of his divine sense. If it were any other martial arts legend, they would have been seriously injured on the spot. Even if they could recover, it would be 100 or 200 years later. One had to know that the loss of divine sense was not like the loss of the physical body. If you lost 10% of your divine sense, it would take a month to recover, but if you lost 20% of your divine sense, it would probably take half a year to recover. If you lost 30% or 40%, you might not be able to recover in decades. And once you lost more than 50% of your divine sense, no matter who it was, even Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend, would fall into a deep sleep on the spot. No one knew when they would wake up. This time, Suchin was stuck at 50% of his divine sense. Coupled with a large number of pills, he could recover so quickly. Just as Suchin was considering whether to continue cultivating. Someone is going to break into the right spring square? Suchin raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the East Palace. Outside the right spring square, the little eunuch from the Palace of Earthly Tranquility looked extremely anxious. After calling the imperial uncle a few times and receiving no reply, he braced himself and prepared to barge in. Although he might be scolded and blamed by Suchin afterwards, he couldn't care less now that Empress Suyuyan was in danger. "Are you looking for me?" At this moment, Suchin's voice quietly came from behind. "Imperial uncle?" The little eunuch was overjoyed. He turned around and bowed deeply. "Her Majesty is seriously ill at the moment. His Majesty ordered me to invite Imperial uncle over." "Her Majesty?" Suchin's face changed slightly. The Emperor of Tang had been on the throne for more than a decade and had never taken in any concubines. In the entire palace, the only person who could be called Her Majesty was his little sister Suyuyan. Seriously ill. Suchin's face was solemn. He extended his divine sense and instantly enveloped the entire palace. A moment later, Suchin slowly retracted his divine sense, and a strange look appeared on his face. Chapter 162. Just now, in that split second, Suchin's powerful divine telekinesis covered Su Yuyan's body. "I was wondering what it was," Suchin muttered in his heart and sighed in relief. If Suchin was not mistaken, Su Yuyan was suffering from the cancer that Suchin remembered from his previous life. To anyone, whether it was Suchin's previous life or this life, cancer was an incurable disease that had no cure. But in Suchin's eyes, as long as Su Yuyan was not near Shu Yuan, there was a way to save him. "Imperial uncle, are you all right? Her Majesty and Her Majesty are still waiting." Seeing that Suchin did not respond, the eunuch became anxious. "Don't worry, take me there." Suchin glanced at the eunuch and said casually, "Yes." Hearing this, the eunuch immediately ran to lead the way for Suchin. Soon, Suchin arrived at Cunning Palace. "Third brother." The Emperor of Tang immediately stood up and walked towards Suchin. "Yuner Shi." The Emperor of Tang's voice was a little hoarse, but he looked at Suchin with hope. At this moment, Suchin was his only hope. If Suchin could not save Su Yuyan, the Emperor of Tang really did not know what to do. Suchin walked straight to the bed and looked at Su Yuyan carefully again. Although he had already seen most of Su Yuyan's body with his divine telekinesis, he still had to look at him personally to be sure. "Third brother, is Yuna all right?" The Emperor of Tang waited for a while, and finally could not help but ask. Suchin was just about to reply that she was fine, but he was interrupted by Su Yuyan in a panic. "Your Majesty, I want to stay with third brother for a while." Su Yuyan looked at the Emperor of Tang and begged. Su Yuyan was worried. If even Suchin said that she could not be cured, the Emperor of Tang would fall from hope to despair. The Emperor of Tang heard Su Yuyan's request, hesitated for a while, and nodded. "All right, I'll take him out now." A moment later, only Suchin and Su Yuyan were left in the entire Cunning Palace. Suchin did not speak. He used his divine telekinesis again and began to think about how to cure Su Yuyan as much as possible. If it was someone else, Suchin naturally would not have this problem. he would directly use his true essence to eliminate the source of the cancer. Of course, the other party would definitely suffer a lot in the process. However, Su Yuyun was Su Qin's little sister after all. Su Qin naturally wanted to cure Su Yuyun in the best way. Su Yuyun saw that Su Qin did not speak and looked at her repeatedly. Her heart suddenly sank to the bottom. Finally, she forced a smile and said, "Third brother, I want you to accompany me to the Imperial Garden to have a look." The Imperial Garden was the place where the Imperial Palace planted thousands of flowers for the Emperor and his concubines to see. Since Su Yuyun became the Empress, she would come to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers if she had nothing to do. In the Imperial Garden, Su Qin and Su Yuyun walked slowly. Because it was winter, the thousands of flowers in the Imperial Garden had withered, and there was a sense of loneliness. After all, the Imperial doctors in the Imperial Palace had some skills. Although they were helpless against the cancer, they still made Su Yuyun feel better. At least she could walk. "Third brother, after so many years, you're still the same. You haven't changed at all." "But I'm about to become an old woman." Su Yuyun looked at Su Qin and said softly, "Aging and youth are just superficial appearances. Don't worry about it." Su Qin said something that was rare for him. Over the years, in order to not let himself appear too abnormal, Su Qin deliberately whitened his hair a little. But even so, Su Qin still looked unusually young, whether it was in terms of skin or appearance. This made Su Yuyun very envious. After all, even if she was the Empress, she could not keep her youth forever. "That's true, but how many people in the world can see through it?" Su Yuyun smiled. Over the years, she often chatted with Su Qin. Of course, she knew that Su Qin did not care about the outside world. "If you want to stay young forever, I can help you." Su Qin glanced at Su Yuyun, and his heart suddenly moved. He remembered that when he was at the Shaolin Temple, he had received a face-retaining pill from signing in. However, for Su Qin at that time, the face-retaining pill was not as useful as a small recovery pill. At least the latter could be treated as candy for Su Qin to chew. As a result, the face-retaining pill was still placed in a corner of the system space. It was extremely disliked by Su Qin. Of course, although Su Qin did not like the face-retaining pill, he knew that for some people, the face-retaining pill was comparable to any magical pill. "Third brother, you must be joking." Su Yuyun thought that Su Qin was joking with her, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. At this time, Su Yuyun was already prepared to be incurable, and she didn't care much about the so-called aging of her appearance. So many years have passed in a flash. I still vaguely remember that when third brother was still at the family Su, I liked to follow third brother to the back of the mountain to see the peach blossoms. Su Yuyun seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory. At that time, before Su Qin was sent to the Shaolin Temple, she was only 3 years old. Now that decades had passed, her childhood memories had long been blurred. But the only thing that could always flash through Su Yuyun's mind was the peach blossoms at the back of the family Su mountain, and the back of Su Qin, who had always walked in front of her and was constantly being chased by Su Yuyun. At that time, when the spring breeze blew, the peach blossoms at the back of the mountain all bloomed. It was so beautiful. Su Yuyun closed her eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. "I don't know if I can take another look at the peach blossoms." Su Yuyun opened her eyes, and her voice was slightly melancholy. Peach blossoms were flowers that only bloomed in spring, but it was winter now, and there was less than half a year before the peach blossoms bloomed. And Su Yuyun really wasn't sure if she could last until then. "You want to see the peach blossoms now?" Su Qin turned to look at Su Yuyun and asked seriously. "Yes." Seeing Su Qin's serious look, Su Yuyun couldn't help but laugh. "But I also know that it's impossible." Su Qin shook his head slightly, and took a few more steps forward. "Since you want to see it, I'll let you see it." Su Qin's words made Su Yuyun slightly stunned. She didn't expect Su Qin to be so persistent that he wanted to let her see the peach blossoms that only bloomed in spring and winter. "Third brother, Su Yuyun was just about to persuade Su Qin not to take it seriously. However, the next moment, Su Yuyun saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Su Qin walked slowly to a withered peach blossom, put his right hand on the branch, and said softly, "Open." In an instant, it was as if the god of spring had given an order. With Su Qin as the center, the entire imperial garden within a radius of 100 meters and 1,000 meters was filled with peach blossoms. They were bright and beautiful, and the fragrance of the flowers filled the air, making people feel as if they were in a sea of flowers in May. Su Yuyun opened her eyes wide and looked at Su Qin, who was in the sea of flowers, with a calm and emotionless look in his eyes. "If I become Emperor Qing in the future, I'll repay the peach blossoms everywhere." Chapter 163. Outside the Imperial Garden. The Emperor of Tang waited anxiously. Su Yuyun purposely sent him away so that she could be alone with Su Qin. How could the Emperor of Tang not know what she meant? "Silly girl, even at this time, you're still worried about whether I can accept it." The Emperor of Tang's eyes flashed with gentleness. He had been among the common people for nearly 30 years. Although Eunuch Lu was secretly protecting him under the orders of the Emperor of Tang, in reality, Eunuch Lu was just purely protecting him. As long as the Emperor of Tang's life was not threatened, Eunuch Lu would not appear. Under these circumstances, the Emperor of Tang had experienced the fickleness of human nature. It was not until he met Su Yuyun that the Emperor of Tang truly realized what warmth was. This was also why the Emperor of Tang had not taken in any concubines for more than 10 years after he ascended the throne. He insisted on his promise to only marry Su Yuyun. "Your Majesty, Yun'er will be fine." Su Shimin beside him could not help but comfort him. With such a big thing happening, family Su naturally rushed to the palace early to see Su Yuyun. "That's right, Your Majesty. Little Qin has been in the Shaolin Temple for so many years. He must have learned some real skills," Su Sungho also said carefully. "I hope so." The Emperor of Tang heard this and sighed softly in his heart. "How long has it been since Yun'er and third brother went in?" The Emperor of Tang was silent for a while, then looked at the gardener in the Imperial Garden. The Imperial Garden collected all the precious flowers in the world. Naturally, it needed people to take care of it at all times. It should be known that some flowers were more delicate than people. Once the environment changed, they would wither and die. "Your Majesty, it's been about an hour." Hearing this, the gardener immediately replied with trepidation. "An hour?" The Emperor of Tang frowned slightly. "Are there many flowers in the Imperial Garden now? Do you need a long time to appreciate the flowers?" From the Emperor of Tang's point of view, Su Yuyun and Su Qin went to the Imperial Garden to reminisce at most. It wouldn't take long at all. However, it was a little strange that they hadn't come out yet. "Your Majesty, it's winter now, and most of the flowers have withered. There aren't many that are still blooming." The gardener thought for a while and said with certainty. He took care of the Imperial Garden every day, so he knew everything inside like the back of his hand. Suddenly, at this moment, Su Sungho, who was next to them, could not help but exclaim, "Smell it! Does it smell like flowers?" After Su Sungho finished speaking, he sniffed hard and his face was full of disbelief. "The fragrance of flowers? What fragrance can there be in the winter?" Su Shimin rolled his eyes and was about to reprimand Su Qinghao, telling him not to make a fool of himself in front of His Majesty. But in the next moment, Su Shimin was stunned. "It seems like there really is a floral fragrance." Su Shimin was stunned. He couldn't believe it. "It's indeed a floral fragrance. It should be the fragrance of peach blossoms. I remember when I was young, I used to run to the back of the mountain. There were a lot of peach blossoms there." Su Qingyu swallowed his saliva, his face full of shock. If it wasn't for the fact that he really smelled the fragrance of flowers, he would definitely think that he was hallucinating. Peach blossoms were flowers that only bloomed in spring. It was winter now, so where could he find the fragrance of peach blossoms? Peach blossoms? The Emperor of Tang frowned, as if he couldn't understand why there was the fragrance of peach blossoms at this moment. "Peach blossoms, this is indeed the fragrance of peach blossoms in full bloom." The gardeners in the imperial garden next to them were absent-minded as they muttered to themselves. If the fragrance of peach blossoms in winter was just a shock to others, then in the eyes of these gardeners who had been dealing with flowers for most of their lives, their worldview began to turn upside down. No matter what kind of flower, it would only bloom in a specific season. Since ancient times, it had never changed. But now, the gardeners looked at each other, unable to recover for a long time. The fragrance seems to be coming from the imperial garden. Su Sung-ho looked around and finally looked at the imperial garden. The imperial garden? The Emperor of Tang's expression changed slightly. Third brother and Yun are also inside. The Emperor of Tang thought of this, gritted his teeth, and immediately walked toward the imperial garden. Su Shimin, Su Sung-ho, and Su Qingyu looked at each other, and finally followed in. Inside the imperial garden, Su Yuyun looked at the peach blossoms blooming in all directions with disbelief. The soaring fragrance filled the air, giving him the illusion that he had returned to the sea of flowers in May. Third brother, you! Su Yuyun stared blankly at Su Qin, his mind blank. At this moment, Su Yuyun had a lot of doubts, but in the end, he didn't know where to start. Okay. Don't talk. I've shown you the flowers. Next, I'm going to heal you. Su Qin's eyes became slightly dignified. If it was just to save Su Yuyun, Su Qin certainly didn't need to think for so long. But Su Qin wasn't just satisfied with this. He wanted to use this opportunity to completely transform Su Yuyun's body from the inside out. Sleep first. When you wake up again, you will find that the world has changed. Su Qin looked at Su Yuyun, raised his right hand, and gently pressed on the other party's forehead. Suddenly, Su Yuyun only felt the world spinning, and his consciousness fell into darkness. You would spirit liquid. Su Qin's thoughts moved, and a small white jade bottle suddenly appeared in front of him. Inside the jade bottle, a faint green liquid faintly flowed out, exuding an extremely rich aura of life. This bottle of Yiwood spirit liquid was obtained by Su Qin some time ago. It can transform the body and heal any injuries. For Su Qin, the Yiwood spirit liquid basically has no effect. Not to mention the 4 transformations of his body, the flesh rebirth alone is far from being comparable to the Yiwood spirit liquid. Although the Yiwood spirit liquid is gentle, it is powerful. Martial artists below grade 1 Great Grandmaster can't touch it at all. But since I stepped into the 6th heavenly layer Arhat realm, my grasp of the essence of power has become more subtle. I can completely let ordinary people absorb this Yiwood spirit liquid, not to mention little sister is a martial artist. Su Qin looked at the jade bottle in front of him, his thoughts fluctuating. The next moment, the mouth of the jade bottle slowly opened, and a drop of light green liquid flew out. This drop of light green liquid rotated in the air, and a trace of life aura slowly spread out. Go! Under Su Qin's control, the drop of Yiwood spirit liquid suddenly exploded, turning into a misty green light, enveloping Su Yuyun. Phew! Inhale! As Su Yuyun breathed, the misty green light gradually poured into her body and completely immersed. Yiwood spirit liquid is a spirit liquid condensed from the vitality of heaven and earth. Only the body of a grade 1 Great Grandmaster can accommodate it. Although little sister absorbed it with my help, it was still a bit difficult. At least she needs to sleep for a while to completely transform the spirit liquid in her body into her own vitality. Su Qin thought silently. On the surface, it seems that Su Yuyun has completely absorbed the drop of Yiwood spirit liquid, but in fact, most of the Yiwood spirit liquid is accumulated in her body. At this moment, suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the imperial garden. The Emperor of Tang, Su Shimin, and the other Su family members quickly walked in. Chapter 164. Third Brother. Third brother, are you all right? The Emperor of Tang strode in and said anxiously, Why do I smell the fragrance of peach blossoms? As soon as the Emperor of Tang finished speaking, he saw Su Yuyun lying on a boulder. Ignoring the fragrance of the flowers, he hurried forward and asked with concern, Third brother, how is Yunar? She's fine. Su Qin replied casually. At this time, Su Yuyun had completely recovered when the Yiwood spirit liquid entered her body. After Su Yuyun completely absorbed the drop of Ewood spirit liquid, her body would be transformed by the Ewood spirit liquid and become a wood spirit body. The wood spirit body was a kind of martial Tao physique. It had strong vitality and was immune to all diseases. Even if it did not enter the martial Tao, it could still live for more than 100 years. And if it became a martial Tao practitioner, its talent in martial Tao cultivation, even if it was not as good as Li Wan's, was far better than ordinary people. In fact, ever since Su Qin entered the sixth heaven, he had been thinking about when to give everyone in the family Su a drop of Ewood spirit liquid. Not to mention that it could enhance one's talent in martial Tao cultivation, it could at least increase one's lifespan by a few decades. Yuner is fine? The Emperor of Tang's heart finally relaxed a little. If it was someone else who said this, the Emperor of Tang might be suspicious. But the Emperor of Tang was very clear about Su Qin's character. What he said was what it was. He would not exaggerate or understate. Since Su Qin said that Su Yuyun was fine, then Su Yuyun was really fine. Little sister feels a lot younger. Su Sungho opened her eyes wide in disbelief. As soon as she said this, the Emperor of Tang immediately noticed something different. If Su Yuyun's complexion was haggard and deathly pale before, then his current appearance had completely changed. Where did the floral fragrance come from? Su Qingyu blinked his eyes and looked around in confusion. At this moment, as Su Qin withdrew his power, the blooming peach blossoms quickly withered. Su Qingyu looked at them for a long time, but still couldn't see anything. Your Majesty, not only has Her Majesty's life force completely recovered, it's even far greater than before. It's truly unbelievable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Imperial Uncle's medical skills are unprecedented. One of the Imperial physicians following the Emperor of Tang examined Su Yuyun carefully and exclaimed. He had long known that Su Qin's medical skills were godly, but he did not expect it to be so incredible. One had to know that these Imperial physicians had all seen the condition of Su Yuyun's body with their own eyes. They were very clear about the difficulties involved. If Su Qin had spent a few months using various ancient medicines to slowly pull Su Yuyun back, the Imperial physicians would have reluctantly accepted it. But now, Su Qin had only accompanied Su Yuyun to walk around the Imperial Garden, and in less than 2 hours, Su Yuyun had already recovered. Not only had she recovered, but Su Yuyun's current condition had never been better. This was simply unbelievable. Third brother. Why hasn't Yuner woken up yet? The Emperor of Tang was happy for a while, but then he found that Su Yuyun had been in a deep sleep, so he asked worriedly. Although I saved her, she needs to sleep for about 2 years before waking up. Su Qin glanced at Su Yuyun and said. This was also the reason why Su Qin had been hesitating. After all, even with his help, Su Yuyun could smoothly absorb the Ewood spirit liquid, but she still needed to sleep for 2 years. Of course, compared to the benefits that she would obtain later, the 2 years of sleep were not worth mentioning. 2 years? The Emperor of Tang breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Su Yuyun could wake up, not to mention 2 years, even if it was 20 or 30 years, the Emperor of Tang could afford to wait. This time, I'll have to trouble third brother again. The Emperor of Tang bowed slightly to Su Qin and said emotionally. Since he became the crown prince, Su Qin had helped him countless times. The Emperor of Tang could not even remember how many times. Okay. Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Su Qin and Su Shiming chatted with Su Sungho and Su Qingyu for a while, and then prepared to return to the majestic underground hall. Now that he had just entered the 6th heavenly layer, he needed to spend some time to stabilize his current realm, so that he could be more familiar with the power of the 6th heavenly layer. After Su Qin left, Su Sungho blinked and couldn't help but ask Su Shimin. Dad, you haven't asked little Qin the sudden appearance of the peach blossom fragrance just now. Although Su Sungho didn't know what the fragrance was, he was probably sure that it came from the Imperial Garden. At that time, only Su Qin and Su Yuyun were in the entire Imperial Garden. If anyone really knew, it could only be Su Qin. Fragrance of flowers? Su Shimin thought for a while and shook his head. Forget it now. China must be very tired after curing Yuna. I'll ask China the next time I see him. Okay. Su Sungho nodded. At the same time, Su Qin had returned to the majestic underground hall. Sure enough, after reaching the 6th heavenly layer, I vaguely feel that it will take a long time to break through to the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin sat cross-legged, carefully feeling the power of the circulation in his body, deep in thought. It was different from the cultivation of the 5th heavenly layer. If one wanted to break through from the 5th heavenly layer and step into the 6th heavenly layer, one only needed enough energy, enough accumulation, and enough comprehension. But from the 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer, one had to face the bottleneck in the middle. Whether it was a legend or venerable arhat, only by truly stepping into the 7th heavenly layer could one be called a true peak legend or peak arhat. In addition, only the 7th heavenly layer had the opportunity to condense the miniature domain. From this, it could be seen that for any venerable arhat or legend, the 7th heavenly layer was definitely a qualitative change. Cave world. The sky was dim. Su Qin slowly walked in front of a completely withered demonic tree with only the main trunk left. This demonic tree had an ancient aura. Although it had already withered at this moment, it had existed for at least 10,000 years, which met Su Qin's sign and conditions. The sign and system is bound to my true spirit. Even if I change my body, as long as my true spirit doesn't change, I can still sign in. This incarnation has half of my true spirit, so logically speaking, I should be able to sign in. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. What is a true spirit? A true spirit is the most essential thing of a living being. Every true spirit is unique and represents a certain living being. The physical body can be obliterated, and the divine sense can dissipate, but the true spirit is unique. For example, for venerable arhat and legend, the death of the physical body is not a true death. Only when the divine sense collapses will it completely disappear. In fact, this sentence is not completely accurate, because after the divine sense, there is still the true spirit. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked at the demonic tree in front of him and said in his heart, System, sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtain demonic origin fruit. Chapter 165. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtain the demon origin fruit. A cold, mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Demon origin fruit. A look of joy appeared on Su Qin's face. What he was happy about was not the demon origin fruit itself, but that his guess was confirmed. It's just that, although I can sign in the cave world, the number of times I can sign in per day has not changed. A slight look of regret appeared on Su Qin's face. To put it simply, Su Qin's true spirit is divided into two, and he can sign in with the Emperor of Tang's palace in the cave world. But the number of sign in per day is still only one. For example, if he sign in the cave world today, if he wants to continue sign in the Emperor of Tang's palace, he can only wait until tomorrow. And if he sign in the Emperor of Tang's palace tomorrow, he will not be able to sign in the cave world on that day. Just as Su Qin was thinking, the sound of careful footsteps came, and a charming demon woman slowly walked over. Master. The demon woman bowed respectfully to Su Qin. This demon woman's name was Mohim. Not long ago, she was being hunted down, and Su Qin saved her after encountering her. Of course, the reason why Su Qin saved her was not because of sympathy, but because Mohim's temperament was extraordinary, and she obviously had other identities. Su Qin just entered the cave world, and he just happened to need a demon who knew more about the cave world. Now I ask you answer? Su Qin didn't raise his eyes, sitting cross-legged under the withered demon tree, and said lightly, Master, please ask. Mohim said obediently. Mohim's appearance was not particularly outstanding, but she had a foxy face, and her figure was extremely hot, especially the faint fragrance emitted from her body, which was abnormally seductive. Any man who saw her would want to press her to the ground and ravage her. Do you know about the human world? Su Qin asked casually. The human world? Mohim was taken aback for a moment, and immediately said, Now that the vitality tide in the human world is at a low point, if Master wants to invade the human world, now is not the right time. Mohim paused for a while, as if thinking of something. However, several demon gods in the depths of the world predicted that the low point of the vitality tide in the human world is about to pass. Vitality tide? Su Qin looked at Mohim. Yes. Moji nodded and continued. The human world is vast, and Yuan Qi rises and falls like a tide. However, most of the time, the Yuan Qi tide in the human world is at a low point. During this period, the human world has withered, and there are very few existences at the Demon King level. However, once the low point is over and vitality surges, the human world will usher in a brilliant era. At that time, not to mention the existence of the Demon King level, even the demon god or higher will be born one after another. And the demon gods in the depths of the world want to invade the human world and seize its origin before the real world comes. Mohim quickly said everything she knew. In fact, this information was a secret even in the cave world. Only demon kings had the opportunity to come into contact with it, but Mohim's identity was special, so she knew this in advance. Low point? Great world? Su Qin's expression remained unchanged, but his thoughts, which had always been calm like an ancient well, began to fluctuate. Even though Su Qin had some guesses in his heart, he didn't expect the truth to be like this. Mohim bowed slightly and stood in place, but she didn't think much about it. For Mohim, Su Qin was at least a high-level demon king. The information she said was a secret in front of ordinary demons, but in the eyes of a real demon king, it was just common knowledge. The reason why Su Qin asked her about this common knowledge should be to test her value. What else do you know? After a moment of silence, Su Qin asked unhurriedly. What else do I know? Mohim thought hard for a while and said, if the human world really comes to the great world, the original most barren continent may become the core of the great world. At that time, all the powerhouses in the human world will flock to that continent. I see. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, but his tone was flat. You can go. Yes. Mohim was slightly disappointed. Originally, she thought that Su Qin was going to keep her, but now it seemed that Su Qin had no interest in her at all. After talking so much, he didn't even look at her. Under Chang'an City. In the majestic hall. Su Qin sat cross-legged. Demon origin fruit? Su Qin's mind moved, and a pitch-black fruit that looked like a heart appeared in his hand. The system space was unique. There won't be two just because Su Qin created one divine sense incarnation. Therefore, when Su Qin in the cave world put the demon origin fruit into the system space, Su Qin in the Emperor of Tang's palace could take it out from the system space. However, Su Qin's attention was not on the demon origin fruit at all. Vitality tide? Rising and falling? The great world coming? Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. Thousands of years ago, the cave world invaded the human world, but it failed in the end. I'm afraid it was because they sensed that the world's vitality was at a low point, and it wasn't worth invading. Su Qin looked at the stone tablet not far away, and his mind moved. At this moment, all the doubts in Su Qin's mind were answered. For example, with the cave world's cultivation environment far better than the human world, why would they want to invade the human world? Now the reason was found. The human world that the cave world wanted to invade was not the human world at this moment, but the human world in the future. The next moment, Su Qin's figure disappeared and appeared thousands of feet high in the sky above Chang'an City. Sure enough. Su Qin closed his eyes and felt carefully for a while. The heaven and earth's vitality is beginning to become richer. The amount of qi in the world has also increased. Su Qin opened his eyes and whispered to himself. Simply put, the current world was slowly becoming suitable for martial artists to cultivate. No wonder it was so easy to break through from the 5th heavenly layer to the 6th heavenly layer. At that time, I thought the vermilion fruit had made a great contribution. Su Qin shook his head slightly. The environment of heaven and earth had become suitable for cultivation, and the beneficiaries were all martial artists, and Su Qin was naturally among them. Even because Su Qin was the only venerable Arhat at that time, the benefits he received far exceeded that of other martial artists. It's not just the vitality that has become abundant. Su Qin suddenly thought of something, and his figure rose again, almost reaching a height of 100,000 feet. If he went higher, the 9 heavens astral wind would shatter everything. But with Su Qin's current physical body, he could resist the scouring of the 9 heavens astral wind, but there was no need. A height of 100,000 feet was enough for Su Qin to verify some of the things in his heart. At this point, Su Qin raised his head slightly, looked at the vast sky, and then lowered his head, looking down at the continent under his feet. The sky is getting higher, and the earth is getting wider. Chapter 166. The sky is getting higher, and the earth is getting wider. Su Qin's face was solemn as he said word by word. If he was on the ground, even Su Qin would find it difficult to find anything, because compared to this world, a person is too small. But now that Su Qin is high in the sky, he found that the whole world is slowly changing. This is the essence Qi tide? Su Qin already believed most of Mohim's words at this moment. If it was just the essence Qi becoming abundant, it might be a coincidence, but now the whole world is changing. It can only be the essence Qi tide that Mohim mentioned. The world is about to change. Su Qin returned to the Emperor of Tang's palace. This time, he did not return to the underground palace, but stood in front of the Right Spring Square. There is one more peak grade 1 great Grand Master in the Imperial Palace. Su Qin's divine sense shrouded the commander of the Forbidden Army, and instantly found that his internal strength had transformed and stepped into peak grade 1. If it was before, Su Qin would not have found it strange. The commander of the Forbidden Army was originally peak grade 1, and was only one step away from his own transformation. Now that he has a breakthrough, it is only natural. But after experiencing the existence of the essence Qi tide, Su Qin did not think so. There are more martial artists in Chang'an City. Su Qin's divine sense continued to expand and gradually covered the entire Chang'an City. If this trend continues, the first legend may be born in a few years at most. Su Qin guessed. The world's Qi is changing, and it is much easier for a peak grade 1 great grandmaster to grasp the world's Qi. In this case, someone may really be able to step into the legend realm. However, it is a good thing for other martial artists, but is it not the same for me? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. If the essence Qi tide has not recovered, even if Su Qin has a lot of spirit medicines and spirit fruits, it will take at least 20 years to reach peak 6th heavenly layer. As for breaking through from peak 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer, it will probably take another 10 or 20 years. But now, 2 years. At most 2 years, I can enter the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin judged in his heart. At his level, his grasp of his own body was extremely precise. He could even sense his lifespan, let alone the progress of his cultivation. 2 years in the 7th heaven, 10 years in the 8th heaven, and 30 years in the 9th heaven. So, in 50 years at the latest, I can reach the peak of the 9th heavenly layer and reach the great Arhat realm? Su Qin's expression was filled with joy. Perhaps for ordinary people, 50 years was equivalent to more than half a lifetime. But in the eyes of an Arhat like Su Qin, who has lived for more than 1,000 years, 50 years is only 1/20th of his lifespan. Let's see what effect the demon origin fruit has. Su Qin was in a good mood. He integrated his divine sense into the system space and looked at the demon origin fruit that was beating like a black heart. Just now, his attention had been focused on the vitality tide, and he had neglected this spirit fruit from the cave world. Just from the energy fluctuations, it is equivalent to 100 cinnabar fruits. Su Qin nodded slightly. If he wanted to sign in 100 cinnabar fruits, he would need at least a month to sign in continuously at the crop altar. But now, one demon origin fruit solved the problem. If there are a few thousand more of these spirit fruits, it will be enough for me to cultivate in the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin was quite satisfied. This demon origin fruit didn't contain essence Qi of heaven and earth, but the monstrous demonic Qi of the cave world. In front of other martial arts legends, the demon origin fruit was no different from poison and couldn't be absorbed at all. But for Su Qin, it was just using the devil Buddha golden body to convert the demonic qi in the demon origin fruit into true essence. At most, it was a little troublesome. Keep it first. I'm only at the 6th heavenly layer now. It's too extravagant to consume the demon origin fruit. I'll wait until I reach the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin slowly retracted his divine sense. Just as Su Qin was about to enter the right spring square. Third uncle. Li Wan was trotting towards him. Third uncle. Third uncle. Aye. Li Wan ran to Su Qin, so excited that he was incoherent. Speak slowly. Su Qin glanced at Li Wan and said casually. Okay. Li Wan calmed down, and after a while he said, Third uncle, I broke through again. I'm now a 7th grade martial artist. Li Wan's pretty face was full of disbelief. He had just entered the 8th grade some time ago, but it didn't take long for him to reach the 7th grade. If Li Wan hadn't confirmed that his body was normal and his inner strength was vigorous, he would have thought that he had gone mad. Not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly and praised Li Wan, which was rare. Although it was due to the vitality tide, Li Wan was able to cross a major realm out of thin air. Obviously, he had his own efforts. Third uncle, why? Li Wan's heart was full of doubts, and he couldn't help but ask. Why do I feel that martial arts cultivation has become easier? Su Qin smiled and said meaningfully. It's not that you feel it's easier, but that this world has become easier. Is that so? Li Wan nodded as if he understood. Although he didn't know what Su Qin was talking about, and how cultivation had something to do with the world, since Su Qin said it, it was right. Now that you're a 7th grade martial artist, I'll teach you something. Su Qin looked at Li Wan and said, Now that the world has changed, and the vitality tide has recovered, it is conceivable that in the near future, there will be many more powerhouses in the world. Therefore, Su Qin has to consider cultivating some real powerhouses for the Empire of Tang. Really? Li Wan's eyes lit up when he heard this. Of course it's true. Su Qin's eyes were calm. Fists, palms, legs, fingers, swords, spears, and bows. Choose one, and I'll teach you. Su Qin said slowly. It sounds complicated. Li Wan blinked and looked at Su Qin expectantly. Third uncle, can I learn all of them? Learn all of them? Hearing this, Su Qin smiled and shook his head. Everyone's energy is limited, and it is the same for cultivators. Even grade 1 great grandmasters, legends, and even Earth immortals are only good at one aspect. If you learn all of them, your future achievements will be limited, and the gains will not make up for the losses. Su Qin said gently. In fact, this is indeed the case. Throughout the ages, even Patriarch Bodhidharma of the Shaolin Temple, who is known to have learned many divine arts, only knows the divine arts of the Shaolin Temple. As for the other divine arts in the world, they are limited. When Li Wan heard this, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Third uncle. Li Wan suddenly realized something, looked at Su Qin, and asked cautiously, What are you good at, third uncle? Me? Su Qin laughed involuntarily. He looked up at the sky and said calmly, I am invincible. Chapter 167. Invincible? Li Wan looked up at Su Qin. She was only about 10 years old, and had never been out of the palace. Of course, she didn't know what the word, invincible, meant. At this moment, Li Wan only felt that her third uncle was very powerful, at least much more powerful than those annoying eunuchs in the palace. Okay. Let's not talk about this. What do you want to learn? Su Qin shook his head and looked down at Li Wan. What do you want to learn? Li Wan thought seriously for a while and finally said, Third uncle, I want to learn swordsmanship. I want to be the best swordsman in the world. Li Wan's little face was full of yearning. Since ancient times, swordsmen had killed one person in 10 steps and were unstoppable. This had long been ingrained in people's hearts. When Li Wan thought about what she wanted to learn, the first thing that came to mind was swordsmanship. Swordsmanship? Su Qin smiled and said casually, Wait here for a while. After that, Su Qin turned and walked into the right spring square. After a while, Su Qin came out again, holding a palm-sized piece of wood in his hand. Third uncle, what is this? Li Wan's eyes were sharp, looking at the wood in Su Qin's hand curiously. The way of the sword you want to learn. Su Qin looked at the wood in his hand, raised his right hand and gently scratched it. Suddenly, a shallow sword mark appeared on the wood. Look at this sword mark often, it will teach you what the way of the sword is. Su Qin handed the wood to Li Wan. How can this wood teach me swordsmanship? Li Wan opened her eyes wide and was about to ask this question, but the next moment, Li Wan's eyes fell on the sword mark on the wood. In an instant, Li Wan only felt that the world became illusory, and in her eyes, there was only the shallow sword mark left. The sword mark gradually became bright, detached from the wood, and stood between heaven and earth like a peerless sword light. It became bigger and sharper, and time seemed to slow down. After a long time, Li Wan blinked his eyes again, his small face full of confusion. Third uncle, why do I feel like this piece of wood is alive? Let's go back. Su Qin smiled and waved his hand. Remember what I said. Look at the sword marks on the wood often. Yes. Even though Li Wan still had doubts in his heart, he could only bow and turn to leave. Su Qin was still standing in the same place. His eyes were deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. The sword mark on the wood was casually left behind by Su Qin. It contained a trace of his understanding of the sword Tao. If Li Wan can comprehend that shallow sword mark, then even if he doesn't become a legend, he would at least become a peak grade 1 great grandmaster. Most importantly, that sword mark had pointed out the path for Li Wan in the future, allowing her to no longer be confused or doubtful about cultivation. She only needed to focus on moving forward. This is the most terrifying effect of the sword mark. Of course, when Su Qin handed the wood engraved with the sword mark to Li Wan, he connected it with Li Wan's divinity. Except for Li Wan, no one else would have any reaction when seeing this sword mark. Next, in addition to signing in, cultivation, and occasionally giving pointers to Li Wan, Su Qin felt the changes in heaven and earth. According to Mohim, heaven and earth's essence chi is like a tide, rising and falling. When it falls, all methods wither, and martial arts cultivation is extremely difficult, but when it rises, the laws of heaven and earth appear, and the essence chi is abundant, making cultivation easy. The essence chi tide is the general trend of heaven and earth. It cannot be changed or disobeyed. Su Qin sat cross-legged, carefully feeling his cultivation increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Thoughts constantly flashed through his mind. Perhaps the legendary Buddha has the strength to affect or even reverse the essence chi tide, but obviously, the current Su Qin does not have this ability. Time passed slowly. A year passed in a blink of an eye. In this year, the recovery of essence chi became more and more obvious. In the Emperor of Tang Palace, in addition to the commander of the Forbidden Army breaking through to Peak Grade 1, there were 2 more Peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. For a time, the foundation of the Empire of Tang soared, surpassing the most prosperous period in history in one fell swoop. It only took a year for me to reach Peak 6th Heavenly Layer? Su Qin walked out of the right spring square and felt the changes in his chi. He was overjoyed. There's no need to rush now. I'll wait for a few months before breaking through. Su Qin's mind quickly calmed down, and his thoughts fluctuated. Even if the environment of heaven and earth has become more abundant, and martial arts cultivation has gradually become easier, but it doesn't mean that one can really break through at will. Not to mention, breaking through the most important bottleneck of the Arhat realm from the 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer? It's been a long time since I signed in at the Imperial Palace. Su Qin glanced around and thought. Since his incarnation entered the cave world, most of the times he signed in were spent in the cave world. The reason for this is that after more than 10 or 20 years of repeated signing in, most of the treasures in the Imperial Palace have begun to be repeated. Su Qin has accumulated more than 10,000 drops of innate spirit liquid, and as for other treasures, it's about the same. The cave world really has a lot of Tao accumulation. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and his expression was filled with emotion. He felt that his act of splitting out an incarnation to go to the cave world was becoming more and more correct. He didn't have to bear any risks, and the benefits he obtained were far better than staying in the imperial palace all the time. In a year, I probably know some things about the cave world. The demon well under Chang'an City is connected to the area ruled by the demon Cloud City in the cave world. And the demon Cloud City Lord is a demon king-level existence, almost corresponding to the legend Arhut. This demon Cloud City Lord has been a demon king for hundreds of years, and his strength is probably between the third and fourth heavenly layer? Su Qin touched his chin. In addition, in the depths of the cave world, it is said that there is a demon god overseeing the entire cave world. I wonder what level of powerhouse this demon god is. An earth immortal? Or stronger? Su Qin had a thoughtful look on his face. Su Qin only thought for a moment, and then stopped thinking about it. Although the cave world wants to invade the human world, it will be hundreds or thousands of years later. Only when the world's vitality tide completely recovers will the cave world make a move. Before that, the cave world actually looked down on the human world. The rise and fall of the world's vitality tide involves the height of the entire world, and it's not something that can be completed in a few years or decades. Therefore, Su Qin wasn't in a hurry at all. Just as Su Qin slowly adjusted his state, another 6 months passed. On this day, in a majestic underground hall, Su Qin sat cross-legged. The next moment, Su Qin opened his eyes leisurely. It's almost time to break through. Su Qin's eyes were bright, and he made a decision in his heart. Since stepping into the peak 6th heavenly layer 6 months ago, Su Qin spent a full 6 months adjusting himself, wanting to improve himself to the most perfect state. Now, he finally reached it. Chapter 168. Everything's ready. Next, I will enter seclusion and enter the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin sat cross-legged in the majestic hall with a dignified expression. Whether it's Venerable Arhut, a legend, or the demon king of the cave world, the 7th heavenly layer is a qualitative change. Stepping into the 7th heavenly layer is equivalent to stepping on the peak of this realm. There is a chance to condense a miniature domain, completely above the power of heaven and earth. Although there is a chance to condense a miniature domain, condensing a miniature domain is two different concepts. Most 7th heavenly layer, and even 8th heavenly layer martial artists can't condense a miniature domain. But there is a chance, at least there is hope. Su Qin thought for a while and slowly closed his eyes. The true essence in his body continued to revolve and rise, and an inexplicable aura enveloped the entire majestic hall. Mengyuan Empire. Endless grassland. The Mengyuan Empire's imperial teacher was sitting cross-legged on the top of the holy mountain. Whoosh, endless world's essence chi continued to gather and shrink, rushing towards the imperial teacher. At the foot of the holy mountain, the monarch of the Mengyuan dynasty and several ministers were waiting patiently. It's been more than a year. The imperial teacher hasn't taken that step yet? The Mengyuan emperor looked worried as he muttered to himself. Although the emperor of the Mengyuan Empire was not good at martial Dao, he knew that a martial Dao breakthrough was not necessarily successful. Many martial artists died during a breakthrough, let alone the imperial teacher, who was trying to break through to a higher level from the 9th grade martial Dao. Even if the emperor is confident, he can't help but worry at this moment. Don't worry, Emperor. The imperial teacher is invincible in the world. He will definitely be able to break through smoothly. A rough man next to him whispered. I hope so. The Mengyuan emperor sighed softly. Although the imperial teacher's status in the Mengyuan Empire is higher than the emperor didn't have any thoughts about it. Without the suppression of the imperial teacher, the entire Mengyuan Empire would have collapsed long ago. How could it be like now, eyeing the other countries covetously with the power of a single country? Moreover, the reason why the emperor can sit in this position is because of the imperial teacher's support. In this case, the emperor can't wait for the imperial teacher to live as long as possible. How could he have other thoughts? Just as the two of them were talking, the chi of heaven and earth suddenly stopped and then gradually calmed down, no longer converging towards the peak of the sacred mountain. This is? The burly man's pupils shrank as he subconsciously looked towards the mountain peak. The Emperor of the Ming Yuan Empire may not be able to detect the changes in the world's essence qi, but as a martial artist in the upper realm, he can already feel the fluctuations of the world's essence qi. When the Ming Yuan Emperor saw the rough man's performance, he also followed his gaze and looked at the top of the holy mountain. That is? The coarse man's expression changed. At the top of the mountain, a tall figure had appeared out of nowhere. This tall figure slowly walked down the mountain. However, what made the rough man feel incredulous was that with every step the tall figure took, he would cross hundreds of meters. In just a short moment, he had already arrived at the foot of the mountain. Imperial Tutor! Imperial Tutor, you've finally come out! The Ming Yuan Emperor was overjoyed. He quickly ran to the tall figure and said respectfully, "This tall figure is Ming Yuan's imperial teacher, who has been in seclusion for a year and a half. Greetings, Imperial Advisor." The coarse man swallowed his saliva, walked forward, and bowed. "Imperial Tutor, have you taken that step?" The coarse man mustered up his courage and asked. If it was before, when the coarse man saw the Imperial Tutor, he would only feel that the other party was the embodiment of heaven and earth. But now, the coarse man felt like he was facing an ordinary person. Although the Imperial Tutor was standing in front of him, the coarse man couldn't detect any aura from the other party. Of course, the coarse man didn't think that the Imperial Tutor was really an ordinary person. Returning to the origin. This is returning to the origin. The coarse man roared in his heart, but his expression became more and more respectful. He almost lowered his head to the ground. I barely made it out. The Imperial Tutor looked at the coarse man with a smile on his face. It wasn't until now that I know why a legend is invincible in this world. As soon as you enter this realm, your divine sense will transform, and you will be able to completely control the power of heaven and earth. With just a thought, you can collapse mountains and crack the earth. It's a legend, the Imperial Tutor said slowly with a sigh. Since he entered the legend realm, he felt that heaven and earth had changed. It was as if a fish that had been living in the water suddenly jumped and saw the world above the water. When the coarse man heard the Imperial Tutor's words, he immediately memorized them in his heart without missing a word. Because the coarse man knew that this was the insights of a legend. In any era, it was a top secret. It was something that countless Grade 1 great-grandmasters could only dream of. Okay. How is the preparation of the army? The Imperial Tutor said slowly, then turned to look at the Emperor, who was also standing next to him. As early as the Imperial Tutor was preparing to break through, he asked the Emperor to prepare the army. As soon as he enters the legend realm, he will lead the army south and unify the world, achieving the great feat that the Ming Yuan Empire has not been able to accomplish for countless years. Imperial Tutor. The army has been mobilized. At present, the Ming Yuan Empire has gathered 1 million iron cavalry. The other 4 million troops are waiting for the Imperial Tutor's order to go south. The Emperor bowed and said, 1 million iron cavalry and 4 million troops can be said to be the entire heritage of the Ming Yuan Empire. Among them, 1 million iron cavalry was accumulated by the Ming Yuan Empire for hundreds of years. As for the 4 million troops, they were forcibly recruited by the Ming Yuan Empire over the past few decades after destroying more than a dozen small countries in the surrounding area. Compared with 1 million iron cavalry, the 4 million troops are not worth mentioning at all. But no matter how weak they are, once the number reaches 4 million, it is still daunting. In that case, let's go south. In the shortest time, we will reach Chang'an City, the Imperial Tutor said faintly with his hands behind his back. Chang'an City? The Ming Yuan Emperor was shocked. Imperial Tutor, the legend in Chang'an City? The Emperor asked cautiously. Don't worry. The Imperial Tutor glanced at the Emperor and said without changing his expression. Although I have just entered the legend realm, my cultivation technique is good at attacking. Coupled with the blessing of the Ming Yuan Empire's national fate, my fighting methods are close to that of a second heavenly layer legend. Even if it's not as good as the legend in Chang'an City, it's easy to delay the other party. At that time, you can take advantage of the situation and trample on Chang'an City. Although the imperial tutor's tone was light, it was full of confidence. Yes. The emperor immediately bowed when he heard this. Soon after, a piece of news quickly spread from the Mengyuan Empire and instantly swept the world. The imperial tutor has become a legend in a single leap. The Mengyuan Empire has mobilized an army of 5 million to go south. The world was shocked, and all countries were terrified. Chapter 169. The Mengyuan Empire is going south. As soon as this news came out, the whole world fell into extreme fear. As a huge country that occupies the endless grasslands in the north, the Mengyuan Empire has always been eyeing the other countries covetously. If it weren't for the fact that they were worried that the other countries would join forces, the world would have long been engulfed in the flames of war. Now, with the imperial teacher entering the myth realm, the Mengyuan Empire no longer intended to endure and directly mobilized the army. Northern Song. Imperial Palace. The Song Emperor and many ministers had ugly faces, but no one dared to speak. The Mengyuan Empire has sent 5 million troops, and the imperial teacher has reached the myth realm. No matter which one it is enough to shake the whole world. I underestimated the imperial teacher. Yui was silent for a long time and whispered. As the Grand Marshal of the Northern Song, Yuyi's strength has reached peak grade 1. He can be said to be the strongest in the Northern Song. 30 years ago, Yui fought with the imperial teacher. Although he was not his opponent at that time, he roughly understood the other party's level. Originally, in Yuyi's view, the imperial teacher was still some distance away from the myth realm. Whether he could complete the third transformation in his life and reach grade 1 great perfection was another matter, let alone the myth realm. But now, in just 30 years, the other party had leaped to the extreme and broken through to the martial arts legend realm that he did not even dare to imagine. One could imagine the complicated feelings in Yuyi's heart. General Yu, I just want to know, what are the odds of the Northern Song winning? The Song Emperor's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Yui and said in a trembling voice. Odds? Yui thought for a while and said, if there is no imperial teacher, and the Mengyuan Empire sends 5 million troops, my Song Empire will join forces with the other countries and have an 80% chance of stopping them. 80% chance? The Song Emperor's eyes lit up, and his heart finally relaxed a little. He knows Yuyi's character very well. Since he said 80%, it means that he is very confident. As long as there is no accident, stopping the Mengyuan Empire will not be a problem. Then, what about the imperial teacher? The Song Emperor looked at Yui expectantly. Plus the imperial teacher? Yui was silent again, and finally said slowly, we can't stop them. As soon as these words came out, the Song Emperor's face suddenly turned pale. We can't stop them. We can't stop them. Yui didn't even consider the possibility of stopping them. What should we do? What should we do? Emperor Song sighed, his face ashen. He believed that he had been diligent ever since he ascended the throne. Although he was not a wise ruler, he was not an incapable ruler either. Emperor Song would never have thought that he would be the one to face the end of his nation. Your Majesty. Actually, you don't have to worry. At this moment, a minister stepped forward and bowed slightly. Not worried? The nation is gone, and you want me to not worry? The Song Emperor didn't even have the strength to be angry. He sighed. Your Majesty. The official who stood up paused for a moment, and continued. The Mengyuan Empire's main target is definitely not our Song Kingdom. Oh? When the Song Emperor heard this, he was shocked. The Empire of Tang occupies the Central Plains, and there is also a martial arts legend in Chang'an City. If the Mengyuan Empire wants to unify the world, they will definitely use most of their military forces on the Empire of Tang. The Mengyuan Empire and the Empire of Tang are two tigers fighting. Even if one side wins, the other side will definitely suffer heavy losses. At that time, we can join forces with the other countries and solve these two hidden dangers in one fell swoop. The more the Song Emperor listened, the brighter his eyes became. In the end, he kept nodding. My dear minister is right. I didn't think it through properly. A smile finally appeared on the Song Emperor's face. As the news of the Ming Yuan Empire southward spread, not only the Song dynasty, but also the other countries in the world realized that the Ming Yuan Empire was declaring war on the Empire of Tang. Throughout the world, except for the Empire of Tang, which country could compete with the Ming Yuan Empire? For a moment, not only were the countries in the world relieved, but they also wanted to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. The Empire of Tang. Taiji Palace. The Emperor of Tang sat high on the dragon throne with a dignified look on his face. My dear ministers, what do you think of the Ming Yuan Empire's southward invasion? The Emperor of Tang glanced at the civil and military officials in the court and said, Your Majesty, since the imperial preceptor of the Ming Yuan Empire has entered the myth realm, he doesn't know the one in the imperial palace. The Minister of War stood out and said, Invite the one in the imperial palace? The Emperor of Tang was silent, not knowing how to respond. He also wanted to invite him, but he didn't even know who the other party was. How could he invite him? How could he invite him? Maybe the legend in the imperial palace has already left. What else? The Emperor of Tang calmed down and asked again. Your Majesty, there is no other way. The Minister of War couldn't help but say, If we don't invite the one in the imperial palace, the Empire of Tang has no chance of winning. What the Minister of War said was true. Originally, the Ming Yuan Empire's 5 million troops had already put a lot of pressure on the Empire of Tang, plus the imperial preceptor of the Ming Yuan Empire. They couldn't fight at all, and there was no way to fight. When two armies fight, they must be evenly matched to have the desire to fight, but the current situation is that the Ming Yuan Empire is simply crushing the Empire of Tang. I know. The Emperor of Tang sighed softly and continued, Pass my order, mobilize all the armies in the world and gather them in front of Chang'an City. I want to fight the Ming Yuan Empire in Chang'an City. As soon as the Emperor of Tang said this, the faces of the ministers in the court changed. Fight the Ming Yuan Empire in Chang'an City? Isn't that giving up the territory outside Chang'an City to the Ming Yuan Empire? Most of the ministers in the court were puzzled, but a small number of them turned pale and faintly realized the reason why the Emperor of Tang did this. Could it be that the one in the imperial palace had a problem? The ministers were uneasy, but they could only follow the orders of the Emperor of Tang. Time passed slowly. 6 months passed in a blink of an eye. In these 6 months, the Emperor of Tang summoned all the armies in the Empire of Tang and gathered them outside Chang'an City. And on this day, the Emperor of Tang and many ministers stepped on the city wall of Chang'an City. Your Majesty, the Ming Yuan Empire's army has arrived. The commander of the Forbidden Army walked to the side of the Emperor of Tang and bowed. They're here? The Emperor of Tang looked up outside Chang'an City. He saw a layer of thin black lines slowly appear at the end of his line of sight. This layer of thin black lines was like a swarm of locusts, densely packed, exuding a cold and murderous aura. The Ming Yuan Empire had mobilized the power of a country and 5 million troops and was about to arrive outside Chang'an City. Buzz! At this moment, a terrifying aura rose from the depths of the Ming Yuan Empire's army and swept toward Chang'an City. Wherever the aura passed, countless soldiers of the Empire of Tang turned pale and felt that every time they moved, they had to exert several times more strength than before. Even ordinary martial artists, under the shroud of this aura, felt that their internal force was circulating slowly and their strength was suppressed. This is? The commander of the Forbidden Army's expression changed greatly as he turned to look at the Emperor of Tang. Your Majesty, the imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire has made a move. At the same time, under Chang'an City, in the majestic palace, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 170. Finally, the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin exhaled softly and began to converge his aura and calm his blood and qi. I didn't expect it to be so smooth, without any twists and turns. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He was very satisfied. True essence, body, and divine sense have soared by at least 10 times. Now I can suppress a 6th heavenly layer legend with just one finger. Su Qin felt the vast sea of true essence, qi, and blood in his body and judged in his heart. Although the breakthrough was smooth, this retreat took 6 months. If it weren't for the incarnation's daily sign-ins in the cave world, I'm afraid I would have suffered a great loss. Su Qin glanced at the Black Devil's well not far away and thought to himself. If it weren't for the incarnation's daily sign-ins, Su Qin would have definitely wasted 6 months of sign insurance. 6 months of sign insurance. According to the calculation of 1 sign-ins per day, there are a total of 180 sign insurance. Even if he can only get 1 demon origin fruit each time, it is still 180 demon origin fruits. Let's see what's happening outside. Su Qin stretched his muscles and bones and casually released his divine sense, which easily covered a radius of 100 miles. Huh! The Ming Yuan Empire's army is coming to Chang'an City? Su Qin's thoughts moved, and he took a step forward and disappeared. On the city wall of Chang'an City, the Emperor of Tang's face was pale. The face of the Forbidden Army commander next to him was also ugly. As a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, although the Forbidden Army commander was not suppressed by the Imperial teacher dozens of miles away, it was obvious that he was aware of the gap between him and the other party. Your Majesty, why don't we evacuate? In any case, saving our lives is the most important thing. The Forbidden Army commander couldn't help but say. Perhaps others are still counting on the legend in the Emperor of Tang's palace to take action. However, as the confidant of the Emperor of Tang, the commander of the Forbidden Army had learned from the Emperor of Tang several months ago that even the Emperor of Tang himself did not know who the martial arts legend in the palace of the Emperor of Tang was and whether or not he would make a move. Under such circumstances, the commander of the Forbidden Army naturally advised the Emperor of Tang to prioritize saving his own life. As for the rest, he could only take 1 step at a time. The Emperor of Tang glanced at the commander of the Forbidden Army and said softly, "You want me to abandon the millions of people in Chang'an, abandon the Tang dynasty, and escape alone?" The Emperor guarded the country's gates. The king died for the state. As the Emperor of the Empire of Tang, if the Emperor of Tang really escaped, how could he face the previous emperors of the Empire of Tang? This general. The commander of the Forbidden Army faintly sensed the determination in the Emperor of Tang's words. He knelt on one knee and solemnly said, "Before this general dies, nothing will happen to your Majesty." The commander of the Forbidden Army's words revealed his determination to die. He is a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. If he wants to leave, unless the Imperial teacher personally takes action, no one can stop him. However, the commander of the Forbidden Army did not have such thoughts. Because he is the commander of the Forbidden Army. Everything he has now was given to him by the Empire of Tang. Good! Very good! The Emperor of Tang's face showed a gratified expression. At this moment, the Emperor of Tang glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and suddenly froze. He then asked, "Third brother, when did you come back?" "Just now." Su Qin walked to the city wall unhurriedly and glanced at the Ming Yuan army that was still 20 miles away. Before Su Qin was ready to enter seclusion and step into the 6th heavenly layer, he had already informed the Emperor of Tang and the family Su that he would be going on a long trip. "Third brother, you shouldn't have come back." The Emperor of Tang sighed softly, his face full of bitterness. Su Qin could have come back at any time, but why did he have to come back at this time? "Third brother, I will have someone escort you out of Chang'an City. No matter what happens in the future, don't come back." The Emperor of Tang looked solemn and said seriously, "Leave? Why should I leave?" Su Qin's eyes were calm as he replied casually, "Why should I leave?" The Emperor of Tang was stunned. He looked at the Ming Yuan army 20 miles away, and then looked at Su Qin. He did not react at all. "Why should I leave? The Ming Yuan army is coming. If I don't leave, am I waiting to die under the enemy's weapons?" "Third brother, not only you have to leave, but Yuaner, and Waner also have to leave. Take care of them for me," the Emperor of Tang said in a deep voice. Although the Emperor of Tang has made up his mind to live and die with Chang'an City, it does not mean that he will watch Su Yuyun and Li Wan die with him. Yun'er is still asleep and can't leave third brother's care. Yuan'er and Wan'er are still young and need third brother's guidance. This is the last time I'm begging you, third brother. The Emperor of Tang bowed slightly to Su Qin and said bitterly, I'm not an emperor. Not only did I not let third brother enjoy glory and wealth, but I also made third brother run for his life. There's no need. Su Qin didn't even look at the Emperor of Tang. Time passed slowly. Several hours passed in the blink of an eye. The Mingyuan army stopped 10 miles away from Chang'an City. For a time, the smell of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood came from 10 miles away. It's over. Now we can't leave even if we want to. The Emperor of Tang felt a chill in his heart and looked at Su Qin next to him. In the past few hours, the Emperor of Tang has been persuading Su Qin to leave, but it didn't work at all. This made the Emperor of Tang almost jump. Just after the Mingyuan army stopped, the army dispersed, and a tall man slowly walked out. Is that the imperial teacher of the Mingyuan Empire? The Emperor of Tang saw this scene and his face suddenly turned pale. The other people on the city wall also looked dignified, and almost all of their eyes were focused on the tall man. Under everyone's gaze, the tall man took a few steps and slowly stopped, then looked at Chang'an City in the distance, and said lightly, When I left the Mingyuan Empire, I was looking forward to it. The tall man's voice was not loud, but it spread over 10 miles and clearly resounded in the ears of the Emperor of Tang and others. I'm looking forward to fighting with another legend. I am a warrior, and even if I die, I should die in a fight, not like a tortoise waiting to die of old age. The imperial teacher's voice became louder and louder, and finally it was like a bronze bell, constantly shaking in all directions. But now, I am disappointed. I'm completely and utterly disappointed. It turns out that there is no legend in Chang'an City. All my expectations and fighting spirit along the way have turned to nothing. Ming Yuan's imperial teacher's words contained a hint of anger, and his last sentence was like a thunderclap that shook the earth. On the city wall of Chang'an City, everyone only felt a roar in their mind, and the roar of the imperial teacher echoed in their ears. There was only one thought in everyone's mind. There is no legend in Chang'an City? There is no legend in Chang'an City? There is no legend in Chang'an City? For a long time, the reason why they had the courage to stand here and face the 5 million troops of the Mingyuan Empire was because they had placed their hopes on the legend in the depths of the imperial palace. But now, the imperial teacher actually said that there is no legend in Chang'an City? Without a legend, how can they resist the Mingyuan Empire? I didn't expect that the legend in Chang'an City would actually leave. The emperor's eyes lit up as he muttered to himself. Before he came, he was still worried about who was stronger between the imperial teacher and the legend in Chang'an City. But now, if there is no legend in Chang'an City, there is no need for the imperial teacher to take action. The Mingyuan Empire's army is enough to trample Chang'an City. Unify the world. My Mingyuan Empire will end the chaos, unify the world, and establish a great cause. The emperor's eyes were full of heat. On the city wall, the Emperor of Tang's face was pale, and there was a deep despair on his face. Just now, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart, thinking that the legend in the depths of the imperial palace might take action to stop the imperial teacher. But now, hearing the imperial teacher's words, the Emperor of Tang suddenly fell into an abyss. The Emperor of Tang did not suspect that the imperial teacher was lying. Now that the war is imminent, there is no point in the imperial teacher lying. If the legend was really in Chang'an City, he would have taken action long ago and would not wait until now. Thinking of this, the Emperor of Tang only felt his vision go black, his legs went soft, and he fell to the ground. Suddenly, at this moment, a slender and powerful right hand supported the Emperor of Tang. Third brother. Emperor Li Xing barely recovered. When he saw Su Qin, who was supporting him, he bitterly said, Third brother, I'm sorry, 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 I'm sorry to the Su family, and I'm sorry to the countless people of the Tang Empire. Don't say sorry. Su Qin directly interrupted the Emperor of Tang, retracted his right hand, and slowly walked forward. "Third brother, what are you going to do?" The Emperor of Tang suddenly reacted and asked subconsciously. Su Qin didn't even turn his head, he only left these two words. "Kill him." Chapter 171. Kill him? When the Emperor of Tang heard these two words, his first reaction was that Su Qin was going to kill someone, and his second reaction was, "Not good, the third brother is going to fall." At this moment, they were on the city wall of Chang'an City. If Su Qin continues to move forward, he will inevitably walk out of the city wall and fall down. Chang'an City, as the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties, has a high city wall. Even if a martial artist falls from here, he will inevitably be covered in dust. What's more, the gate of Chang'an City is now closed. If Su Qin really falls outside the city wall, he will definitely not be able to come in a short time. If at this time, the Mingyuan Empire's army launches an attack, Su Qin will probably have to face the Mingyuan Empire's army alone. Thinking of this, the Emperor of Tang suddenly became anxious. "Stop the third brother." The Emperor of Tang looked at the Forbidden Army commander next to him. "As you wish." The Forbidden Army commander bowed slightly and was about to make a move. However, the next moment, under the incredulous gaze of the Forbidden Army commander, Su Qin stepped out, and his figure appeared outside the city wall. He walked in the air, step by step, toward the Mingyuan Empire's army, as if he was stepping on an invisible ladder. "This is—" The Forbidden Army commander's pupils shrank fiercely, and in a flash, 4 words suddenly flashed in his mind. "Riding the wind!" The Forbidden Army commander's heart was set off a monstrous wave. Throughout the ages, only the legendary martial arts legends or venerable Arhat can step on the sky and the earth and ride the wind. "The third brother, how can the third brother fly?" The Emperor of Tang blinked his eyes, his mind was in a mess, and he couldn't react for a long time. Not far away, the family Su people were also looking at the battlefield with worry. At this moment, Su Sung-ho exclaimed, "The third brother won't take it too hard, right?" As soon as he said this, Su Shimin and Su Qingyu immediately looked up, and their expressions changed greatly. However, when they saw Su Qin walking in the air, their eyes widened in disbelief. Mingyuan Empire's army. The Emperor carefully walked to the side of the Imperial teacher and probed. "Imperial teacher, is there really no legend in Chang'an City?" Although the Mingyuan Empire's Imperial teacher had disappointed him by shouting at the Empire of Tang in front of the two armies, the Emperor still wanted to hear the Imperial teacher say it again. The Imperial teacher glanced at the monarch and said lightly, "Just now, I used my divine sense to scan the city. If there really is a legend in Chang'an City, how could it be hidden from me? To us, the aura of an expert of the same level is as dazzling as the sun, unless the other party is far stronger than us." As the Imperial teacher spoke, he suddenly laughed. "Imperial Preceptor is invincible in the world. How can there be an existence far superior to Imperial Preceptor in this world?" The Mingyuan Emperor immediately complimented. "Then, Imperial Teacher, should I order the army to attack the city now?" The Mingyuan Emperor calmed down, suppressed the joy in his heart, and quickly asked. After saying this, the Emperor bowed and stood in place, patiently waiting for the Imperial Teacher's next instruction. "Imperial Teacher?" The Emperor waited for a while, but he still did not hear the Imperial Teacher's reply, so he couldn't help but look up. However, when the Emperor looked over, he saw that the originally indifferent Imperial Teacher had a dignified expression as he stared in a certain direction. "What is the Imperial Teacher looking at?" The Emperor was shocked and quickly followed the Imperial Teacher's gaze and looked in the direction of Chang'an City. He saw a figure stepping on the sky from Chang'an City, approaching the Mingyuan Empire's army at a leisurely pace. "This is—" The Emperor's complexion suddenly changed. This figure was walking in the air. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on an invisible ladder. There was no leverage at all. Even a Pete Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would not be able to do this. The Emperor had only seen this scene from the Imperial Teacher. Just as the Emperor was inexplicably horrified, Su Qin had already arrived at the Mingyuan Empire's army alone. At this moment, He was surrounded by 5 million Ming Yuan Empire's army, but his expression did not change in the slightest. It was as if he was not facing 5 million soldiers, but 500 ants. Are you the legend of Chang'an City? The imperial teacher stared at Su Qin in surprise and asked in a low voice. Even now, when Su Qin stood in front of him, the imperial teacher could not feel the other party's aura at all. If it weren't for Su Qin stepping on the sky and showing the ability of a legend, the imperial teacher might have thought that Su Qin was just an ordinary person. A legend? Su Qin nodded, then shook his head. Huh! The imperial teacher frowned, unable to figure out what Su Qin meant. At this moment, Su Qin said slowly, "If you continue to hide in the grassland, you can live a few more years." When these words came out, the imperial teacher's expression suddenly became gloomy. As the first legend of the endless grassland in the past 200 years, the imperial teacher has been unstoppable since he stepped into the martial Tao. When has he ever been looked down upon like this? Since you've come out. Then let me see what you're capable of. The imperial teacher took a step forward, and his aura began to rise crazily. His blood and chi soared to the sky, faintly connecting with the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire's army. In an instant, the Ming Yuan imperial teacher seemed to have transformed into a giant that reached the heavens. His every move shook the heavens and earth. The imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire was not a fool. To be able to become a martial arts legend, the imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire was not a strategist, but at least he knew how to judge the situation. There were only two possibilities for Su Qin to be able to hide his aura in front of him. First, the other party has some kind of legend-level secret technique to hide his aura. Second, Su Qin's strength is far greater than his. If it was the former, the imperial teacher did not need to retreat at all. He could directly fight with Su Qin. If it was the latter, the imperial teacher could not retreat. Since the other party's strength was far greater than the imperial teacher's, how could the imperial teacher escape? Therefore, Ming Yuan's imperial teacher did not hesitate to go all out. He merged his blood and chi with the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire's army. Although he could obtain the power of the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire's vast national fortune, his blood and chi would be contaminated afterwards. He did not know how long it would take to recover. Die! The imperial teacher was like a god, tearing through the air and rushing towards Su Qin. Seeing this scene, Su Qin's expression remained unchanged. He just gently raised his right hand and casually pressed it towards the imperial teacher. "I'm going all out, but you're only responding with a finger?" Seeing this scene, the imperial teacher was furious. His blood and chi surged, and his speed skyrocketed again. "Imperial teacher will win! The Ming Yuan Empire will win!" Not far away, the emperor of the Ming Empire and the generals saw this scene, and their faces showed a happy expression. Although they were not legends, they could still see the situation on the battlefield at this moment. The imperial teacher had a monstrous momentum, while Su Qin was standing there alone. It was clear at a glance who was stronger and who was weaker. After this battle, the imperial teacher will definitely suppress the world. At that time, the other countries will not even dare to resist. The emperor of the Ming Yuan Empire had already imagined the fear of the other countries in the world, and a look of contempt appeared on his face. But soon, the emperor's expression froze, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. In his eyes, as Su Qin pressed down with his finger, the imperial teacher, who was originally monstrous, suddenly stopped and was penetrated by a force. The blood of a legend spilled on the ground. The imperial teacher fell straight to the ground, no longer breathing. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.